We're told that destiny chooses the strong, that the moon goddess marks her favorites with power, with claws, with the ability to shift into something magnificent. We're told that if you're faithful, if you're patient, if you're good enough, your wolf will come, that your mate will find you, that you'll finally belong. But when you stand naked under 13 full moons and feel nothing, no crack of bone, no surge of ancient instinct, no beast rising to meet the silver light, you learn the devastating truth. The world has no use for the powerless. And when you're powerless in a world built on dominance, you don't just fade into the background. You become a target, a cautionary tale, a lesson in what happens when the goddess looks away. They called me the broken one, the girl whose wolf never came, the defect in an alpha bloodline that hadn't produced weakness in 7 generations. My own father couldn't meet my eyes after my 18th birthday passed without transformation. My mother stopped introducing me at pack gatherings, and my sister, golden, perfect, already showing signs of her future alpha strength, she stopped defending me altogether. But here's what no one tells you about being wolfless in a pack of predators. You learn to survive in ways they never have to. You learn to read micro-expressions, to hear the shift in someone's voice before they strike, to calculate escape routes while smiling politely. You learn that stories, the right words at the right time, can be sharper than any claw. And you learn that sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the room isn't the one with teeth. It's the one with nothing left to lose. Chapter 1. The Offering. The morning they decided to give me away. My mother made blueberry pancakes. That should have been my first warning. We hadn't had blueberry pancakes since before my 18th birthday, before the night I failed to shift. Before I became the shame that hung over the ashwood pack like a funeral shroud. But there they were, stacked high on my plate, drowning in maple syrup, with fresh butter melting into golden pools. My sister Vera wasn't eating. She sat across from me, her amber eyes, wolf eyes, the kind I'd never have, tracking every movement I made. She'd shifted for the first time 3 months ago, at 17, early, even for an alpha's daughter. The pack had celebrated for 3 days straight. I'd smiled through every minute of it, cheeks aching, while something inside me quietly died. "Eat, Kiera," my mother said softly, not meeting my gaze. She'd stopped meeting my gaze 6 months ago. I picked up my fork. The pancakes tasted like ash. My father arrived as I was forcing down the last bite. Alpha Marcus Ashwood. No, wait. I need to change that name. Alpha Ronan Ashwood. He commanded a room just by entering it. All 6'4" of him, shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of 200 pack members. He'd carried that weight with pride my entire life, until I became part of it. "Kiera," his voice was gentle. That was the second warning. My father was never gentle anymore, not with me. Gentle meant bad news. Gentle meant he was about to do something that would hurt. "We need to talk." I set down my fork carefully, precisely, centered it on the plate, folded my hands in my lap. These small rituals of control were all I had left. "There's a situation," he continued, glancing at my mother. She still wouldn't look at me, suddenly fascinated by the pattern on her coffee mug. "The council has increased our tribute again." The council, the governing body of the 5 territories, made up of the strongest alphas from each region. They'd been squeezing smaller packs for years, protection money, they called it. Insurance against rogue attacks. Everyone knew it was just extortion with official paperwork. "We can't pay it," my father said bluntly. "Not in full, not this quarter. The winter was too harsh, we lost too much livestock, and..." He stopped himself, but I knew what he'd almost said. "And we've been hemorrhaging members since it became known that the alpha's eldest daughter is defective." Wolves were practical creatures. They followed strength. A pack led by an alpha who'd produced a wolfless heir? That was weakness. And weakness was contagious. "What does this have to do with me?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand, beginning to feel the walls closing in. My father finally met my eyes. In his gaze, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Resignation. He'd already made his decision. This conversation was just a formality. "The council has offered an alternative to the monetary tribute," he said. "They need servants for the northern territories, humans and others who can't shift. They're willing to accept able-bodied workers in place of payment. The room went very quiet. Even the morning birds outside seemed to sense something terrible unfolding. "You're giving me to the council," I said flatly. "Not a question." "It's not like that," my mother started, but I cut her off with a laugh. It came out sharper than I intended, edged with something that might have been hysteria if I let it loose. "What is it like then?" "You're trading me for a tax break. Kiera, does the pack know?" I looked between them. "Have you announced it yet?" "Good news, everyone. We've solved our financial problems by selling off the broken daughter. That's enough." My father's voice cracked like a whip, and I felt Vera flinch across the table. Alpha command. The kind that made pack members' wolves roll over and submit. It didn't work on me, it had never worked on me. One of the few benefits of being wolfless, but I still felt the weight of it. The anger. The shame beneath the anger. I was embarrassing him. Even now, even in this moment, my existence was an embarrassment. "You're right," I said quietly, standing up. My chair scraped against the floor with a sound like bones breaking. "I am enough. Enough to solve your problems. Enough to trade away. Just enough." "There's something else," my father said, and his voice had gone strange. "Careful. The council representative arriving today isn't just any collector. It's Beta Thornwood." I froze halfway to the door. Everyone knew about Beta Thornwood. He was the council's enforcer, the one they sent when packs couldn't pay, when examples needed to be made. He'd reportedly burned 3 pack houses to the ground last year when their alphas tried to negotiate. Wolves feared alphas. Alphas feared the council, and the council used Beta Thornwood like a blunt instrument. "He specifically requested you," my father added, "by name." The floor seemed to tilt under my feet. How does he even know about me? My parents exchanged a look I couldn't decipher. "Your condition has become somewhat known outside the pack," my mother said delicately. "The only wolfless daughter of an alpha bloodline in 3 generations. It's unusual. There are rumors that the council is collecting unusual cases for some kind of experiment," I finished. "Research. Are they going to cut me open to see what's wrong with me?" "We don't know," my father admitted, "but refusing him isn't an option. He'll be here by noon." I looked at Vera. She'd been silent through all of this, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white. "Do you have anything to say?" She opened her mouth, closed it, shook her head. Of course not. Vera was perfect, strong, powerful, destined to be alpha after our father. She'd never had to fight for anything in her life. Why would she start now? Why would she risk the council's displeasure for a sister who couldn't even shift? "I need to pack," I said. "Kiera," my mother reached for me, but I stepped back. "Don't." The word came out cold, final. "You've made your choice, let me make mine." I didn't have much to pack. Wolfless pack members weren't exactly showered with resources. Most of my clothes were hand-me-downs from Vera, taken in and patched up. I had my books, my precious, worn books that I'd collected from the pack library, the ones no one else wanted because they were too old or too damaged. I had the journal where I wrote my stories, the ones I told myself late at night when the loneliness became too heavy to bear, and I had the silver locket my grandmother had given me before she died, the only member of the family who'd never looked at me with disappointment. "You're not broken," she'd whispered on her deathbed, pressing the locket into my palm. "You're just different. And different isn't wrong, it's dangerous. To them, not to you. Remember that." I'd never understood what she meant. Different was weakness. Different was wrong. Different was why I was being traded away like livestock. I was shoving the last of my books into a canvas bag when Vera appeared in my doorway. She stood there silently, watching me with those wolf gold eyes that I'd never have, that I'd wanted so desperately for 18 years. "I'm sorry," she said finally. I didn't turn around. "Are you?" I didn't know they were going to. I mean, I knew things were bad financially, but I didn't think. "You didn't think they'd choose you over me?" I faced her then. "Really, Vera? You didn't see this coming?" She had the grace to look ashamed. "I could talk to Father. Maybe if you what? Offered to go in my place?" I laughed bitterly. You're the heir. The future alpha. The golden child with the perfect wolf and the perfect future. They'd sooner cut off their own arms than trade you. That's not fair. None of this is fair. The words exploded out of me, 6 months of silence and swallowed pain erupting all at once. It's not fair that I never shifted. It's not fair that the pack looks at me like I'm diseased. It's not fair that my own parents can't stand to be in the same room with me. And it's not fair that you get to stand there and say you're sorry when we both know you're relieved. Relieved? Vera's voice rose, her wolf flashing behind her eyes, that telltale golden glow that meant she was close to shifting. You think I'm relieved that my sister is being taken away by the most dangerous beta in the territories? I think you're relieved you'll finally stop having to explain me, to apologize for me, to watch the pack whisper about how the alpha's bloodline has been tainted. I zipped my bag closed with shaking hands. I think you're relieved that the problem is solving itself. Vera stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something in her face that might have been genuine grief. But then she squared her shoulders, and her expression hardened, alpha training, already taking root. You're right, she said quietly. I am relieved, not because I don't love you, but because watching you suffer has been killing me too, and I can't fix it. I can't make your wolf appear. I can't make the pack accept you. I can't make father see you the way grandmother did. She stepped closer, and I smelled the forest scent that clung to all shifters, pine and earth and wild things. But I can tell you this, Beta Thornwood didn't ask for you because you're broken. The council doesn't collect failures. They collect assets. Whatever they want you for, it's because you have something they need. Something that scares them enough to send their best enforcer to retrieve you personally. That's supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you careful. She pressed something into my hand, a small knife with a silver blade. The kind that could hurt wolves. Grandmother gave me this before she died. She said to give it to you when the time came. I think this is that time. I looked down at the blade, then back at my sister. What did she know? I don't know. But she told me something else. Vera's voice dropped to barely a whisper. She said your wolf isn't missing. It's just sleeping, and when it wakes up, the whole world is going to feel it. Before I could respond, a howl split the air outside the pack's warning call. Someone was approaching the territory borders. Beta Thornwood had arrived. I'd imagined him as a monster, all teeth and scars and cruelty carved into flesh. But the man who stepped out of the black SUV in our pack's central square was something far worse. He was unremarkable. Average height, maybe 5 to 10. Lean build, not the massive frame most betas carried. Dark hair shot through with silver at the temples, pulled back in a neat ponytail. His face was angular, almost scholarly, with wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. He wore a perfectly tailored 3-piece suit like he was attending a business meeting, not collecting human tribute from a desperate pack. The only remarkable things about him were his eyes pale gray, like winter ice, and the way every wolf in the square immediately backed away from him. Even my father, an alpha in his own territory, took an involuntary step back. Power radiated off Beta Thornwood like heat off asphalt. Not the loud, aggressive dominance most wolves projected, but something colder, more certain. This was a man who'd never had to prove his strength, because everyone already knew what he was capable of. Alpha Ashwood, Thornwood said pleasantly, extending a hand. His voice was cultured, educated. Thank you for meeting with me on such short notice. My father shook his hand, though I could see the tension in his shoulders. Beta Thornwood, we have everything prepared as discussed. Excellent. Those pale eyes scanned the crowd that had gathered because of course the entire pack had come to watch my humiliation and landed on me. And this is the girl? I lifted my chin, met his gaze directly, even though every instinct screamed at me to look away. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of my fear. Something flickered across his face. Surprise? Approval? It was gone too quickly to read. Kiera Ashwood, my father said, gesturing me forward. As we discussed, she's healthy, strong for a human. She can read and write, which is rare. She'll be a valuable, I'm sure she will be. Thornwood cut him off smoothly, still watching me with those unsettling eyes. Miss Ashwood, do you understand what's happening here? You're taking me as payment for my father's debts, I said flatly. I'm property now. Not quite. He tilted his head, studying me like I was a particularly interesting puzzle. You're entering into a service contract with the council. 7 years of work in exchange for your pack's financial obligations being cleared. After that term, you'll be free to go wherever you wish. 7 years. 7 years of my life, traded away for a tax bill. And if I refuse? I asked. My father made a strangled sound. You didn't refuse the council. You didn't refuse Beta Thornwood. But Thornwood just smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Then I leave empty-handed. Your father's pack is sanctioned for non-payment, and within 6 months, the council will absorb these territories into the northern holdings. Everyone here will be dispersed to other packs. Most will lose their rank, their homes, their family units. But you'll have your freedom. He said it so reasonably, so calmly, as if he wasn't threatening the destruction of 200 lives. So really, I said, I don't have a choice at all. We always have choices, Miss Ashwood. It's just that sometimes all our options are terrible. He gestured to the SUV. Shall we? I looked back at my family one last time. My father couldn't meet my eyes. My mother was crying silently. Vera stood rigid, her hand pressed to her side where she'd tucked the silver knife. No one was going to save me. No one was going to fight for me. I'd known that, really. But seeing them just let me go, something inside me crystallized, hardened. Goodbye, I said to them. To the pack. To the only home I'd ever known. Then I walked to the SUV and climbed inside, carrying my canvas bag and my grandmother's locket and absolutely nothing else. Beta Thornwood slid into the seat beside me. The driver, another wolf, I could smell him, started the engine without a word. As we pulled away from the pack square, Thornwood handed me a bottle of water and a thick folder. Your contract, he explained. I'd advise you to read it carefully. You're not going where you think you're going. I opened the folder with shaking hands. The first page was standard service terms, duration, basic expectations. But the second page made my breath catch. Destination: the Northern Citadel assignment. Personal service to High Alpha, Darius Blackthorn. Special notation: subject exhibits unique characteristics. Standard protocol waived. Direct assignment approved by High Alpha himself. I looked up at Thornwood. The High Alpha? I'm being sent to the High Alpha? Not just sent, Thornwood corrected. Requested. Personally. He's been looking for someone like you for a very long time. Someone like me? You mean someone wolfless? Someone broken? Those ice-gray eyes studied me again. And this time, I definitely saw it. Approval. Satisfaction. Like I'd passed some test I hadn't known I was taking. Someone, Beta Thornwood said softly, who has absolutely no idea what she really is. The SUV turned onto the highway, heading north. Heading toward the Citadel, heading toward whatever fate the High Alpha had planned for the wolfless girl who should never have existed. And as the miles stretched between me and everything I'd ever known, I felt something stir deep inside my chest. Not my wolf, I'd long since accepted that she would never come, but something else. Something that had been waiting, coiled and patient, for 18 years. Something that whispered, finally, chapter due. The Citadel. The drive north took 6 hours, but it felt like crossing into another world. We left behind the rolling hills and dense forests of the Ashwood territory, climbing higher into the mountains where the air grew thin and cold. The trees changed from oak and maple to towering pines that blocked out the sun, casting everything in perpetual twilight. Snow appeared on the roadside, then on the road itself, forcing the driver to slow down as we navigated switchbacks that dropped off into nothing. Beta Thornwood spent most of the journey working on a laptop, his fingers flying across the keys with mechanical precision. He'd removed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms marked with scars, the kind you got from claws, from teeth, from surviving things that should have killed you. I tried to read my contract, but the legal language twisted around itself like brambles. 7 years of service, room and board provided, no contact with former pack members without permission, termination clause only active in case of gross incompetence or willful endangerment of council interests. In other words, I was theirs until they decided otherwise. You're surprisingly calm, Thornwood observed without looking up from his screen. Most people cry, or try to jump out of the moving vehicle. Would crying change anything? No. Then why waste the energy? I closed the folder and stared out the window at the endless trees. You said the High Alpha has been looking for someone like me. What did you mean? That's not my story to tell. You're taking me to him. I think I have a right to know what I'm walking into. Now he did look at me, one eyebrow raised above his wire-rimmed glasses. Rights are interesting things, Miss Ashwood. They exist only as long as someone more powerful agrees to honor them. In your current position, I'd focus less on rights and more on survival. Thanks for watching. Is he going to kill me? The High Alpha? Thornwood actually smiled, and it transformed his face from unremarkable to something almost handsome. Almost. No. If he wanted you dead, he wouldn't have sent me to collect you personally. He'd have simply sent a termination order to your father. The casual way he said it, like murder was just another administrative task, made my stomach turn. Then what does he want? Thornwood closed his laptop with a soft click. Tell me, Miss Ashwood. What do you know about the origin of shifters? I blinked at the sudden change in topic. The same stories everyone knows. The moon goddess created wolves to protect humanity from darkness. She gave certain bloodlines the ability to shift between human and wolf form, to bridge both worlds. And what darkness were they protecting humanity from? I don't know. The stories don't say. Just darkness, evil, the usual fairy tale stuff. Exactly. He leaned back in his seat, studying me with those unsettling pale eyes. The stories are vague, incomplete, almost as if someone deliberately obscured the truth over generations. What does this have to do with me? Everything, Thornwood said softly. Because you, Miss Ashwood, are proof that the stories are lies. Or at least, not the whole truth. Before I could respond, the SUV rounded a final curve, and the citadel came into view. I'd expected a fortress, stone walls, guard towers, something medieval and imposing. What I saw instead stole the breath from my lungs. The citadel was carved into the mountain itself. A vast complex of black stone and glass that seemed to grow organically from the rock. Massive windows reflected the dying sunlight like dragon scales. Towers spiraled upward, connected by bridges that looked impossibly delicate, as if they were made of ice rather than steel. At the very peak, a single structure rose above everything else. A palace of dark marble veined with silver, crowned with spires that pierced the clouds. It was beautiful, terrifying, wrong in some fundamental way that made my skin prickle with warning. Welcome, Thornwood said, to the seat of the High Alpha's power. Home to the Council of Five. Heart of shifter civilization. It's enormous. 3,000 permanent residents. Another 1,000 in rotating positions, guards, servants, diplomats, traders. The entire northern economy runs through these walls. He gestured to the sprawling complex below the palace. The lower levels house the administrative offices, barracks, training grounds, and servant quarters. The middle levels are reserved for ranked pack members and visiting dignitaries, and the upper palace. He paused, something unreadable crossing his face. The upper palace belongs to the High Alpha alone. Is that where I'm going? Eventually. First, processing. The SUV descended into an underground garage that seemed to tunnel endlessly into the mountain. We passed security checkpoints where armed guards examined the vehicle with mirrors and scanners, their eyes glowing wolf gold in the artificial light. No one stopped us. Beta Thornwood's presence was apparently clearance enough, but I felt their stares tracking me through the tinted windows. Wolfless, their expressions said. Broken, weak. I'd seen that look my entire life. I should have been numb to it by now. We parked in a private bay, and Thornwood led me through a maze of concrete corridors that all looked identical. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air smelled of disinfectant and stone and something else. Something wild and musk-heavy that made my pulse quicken. Fear, I told myself. You're smelling your own fear. We stopped at a steel door, marked only with a number, 247. Thornwood pressed his palm to a scanner, and the door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Inside was a processing room, straight out of a nightmare. White tile covered every surface, reflecting the harsh overhead lights, until the space felt both infinite and claustrophobic. Medical equipment lined the walls, scanners, syringes, instruments I couldn't name. In the center sat a single chair with restraints dangling from the arms and legs. A woman waited beside it, tall and severe in a white coat. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her skin, and her eyes were the flat black of a shark. "Dr. Reeves." Thornwood greeted her with a nod. "This is Kiera Ashwood, the High Alpha's special assignment." Dr. Reeves circled me slowly, examining me like I was a specimen under glass. "Wolfless?" "Confirmed. Age of first heat?" I felt my face burn. I don't. "She's infertile," Thornwood said clinically. "Medical records confirm no heat cycles, no pheromone production, no mate bond capability." The doctor made a note on her tablet. "Interesting. And the bloodline? Pure alpha heritage on both sides. 7 generations of unbroken alpha succession on her father's line. 6 on her mother's, which makes this even more curious." Dr. Reeves grabbed my chin, tilting my face toward the light. Her fingers were cold, impersonal. No physical abnormalities, good bone structure, clear skin. By all external measures, she should have shifted. "But she didn't," Thornwood said, "which is why she's here." The doctor released me and gestured to the chair. "Sit. We need samples, blood, saliva, hair follicles with roots attached. Standard medical scan. The High Alpha wants a complete baseline before," she stopped herself, "before she begins her duties." I didn't move. What if I refuse? Dr. Reeves looked at Thornwood. He sighed, removed his glasses, and pinched the bridge of his nose like I was a particularly tedious problem. "Miss Ashwood, we can do this 2 ways. You can sit in the chair voluntarily, and this will be quick and relatively painless. Or I can have you restrained, and Dr. Reeves will take what she needs while you scream. The High Alpha wants you functional, not comfortable. Choose." The casualness of the threat, the absolute certainty that he would follow through, made my decision for me. I walked to the chair and sat down, gripping the armrests until my knuckles went white. "Smart girl," Dr. Reeves murmured, already moving toward me with a needle. The next hour was a blur of clinical violation. Blood drawn from both arms. Saliva swabbed, hair yanked out by the roots. A full-body scan that left me feeling exposed despite being fully clothed. Dr. Reeves worked in silence, efficient and detached, while Thornwood stood by the door reading something on his phone. I focused on breathing, on staying present, on not letting them see how much this was breaking me. "Remarkable," Dr. Reeves finally said, studying her tablet. "Her DNA shows all the markers for shifter heritage. The genetic sequences are intact. By every measurable standard, she should be able to shift. But the activation gene, the one that triggers first transformation, it's dormant, not absent, not damaged, just asleep." She looked at me with something that might have been hunger. "I've never seen anything like it. It's as if her wolf is there, fully formed, just waiting for the right stimulus to wake it." My grandmother's words echoed in my mind. "Your wolf isn't missing, it's just sleeping. And when it wakes up, the whole world is going to feel it." "Can you wake it?" Thornwood asked. "I don't know. I'd need time to study her, run more tests. You'll have your opportunity, but not yet. The High Alpha wants her as she is for now." He checked his watch. "We're late." "He's waiting." Dr. Reeves looked disappointed, but she stepped back. "Send her back to me weekly for monitoring. If there are any changes, any signs of activation, I want to know immediately." "Of course." Thornwood gestured for me to stand. "Come along, Miss Ashwood. Time to meet your new master." The palace was accessed through a private elevator that required both a keycard and a fingerprint scan. As we rose through the mountain, my ears popped from the pressure change. Thornwood had put his suit jacket back on and straightened his tie, the casual demeanor from earlier replaced by something more formal, more careful. He was nervous, I realized. Beta Thornwood, the council's most feared enforcer, was nervous about this meeting. That should have terrified me. Instead, it crystallized something inside me, a cold, sharp certainty. Whatever was about to happen, Fear wouldn't save me. Compliance wouldn't save me. The only thing that might was the same thing that had always saved me. My mind. My words. My ability to see what others missed. The elevator opened into a corridor that made me forget how to breathe. The walls were made of some dark material that seemed to shift in the light, not quite black, not quite blue, with veins of silver running through like frozen lightning. The floor was polished marble so reflective it looked like walking on water. And the ceiling was glass, revealing the night sky above with a clarity I'd never seen. Stars blazed like diamonds scattered across black velvet, and somewhere high above, the moon hung full and heavy. The High Alpha's private quarters, Thornwood said quietly. You're one of perhaps 50 people who've ever been allowed up here. Most of the council has never seen beyond the public reception halls. Why me? That, said a voice from deeper in the corridor, is exactly what I intend to discover. The voice was deep, resonant, with a quality that made something in my chest vibrate in response. It bypassed my ears and spoke directly to some primal part of my brain that recognized power when it heard it. A figure emerged from the shadows at the end of the hall. The High Alpha was not what I expected. He was tall, over 6.5 feet, with shoulders broad enough to block out the starlight. But rather than the bulky frame most alphas carried, he moved with a predator's liquid grace. His hair was black as the walls around us, falling to his shoulders in waves that looked like they'd never seen a brush. His face was all sharp, angles, high cheekbones, strong jaw, a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. And his eyes. Oh God, his eyes. They weren't wolf gold like other shifters. They weren't human at all. They were silver, pure, molten silver, and they glowed with an inner light that had nothing to do with reflection. Looking into them was like looking into the heart of a star. Beautiful, mesmerizing, and absolutely deadly. He wore simple clothes, black shirt, black pants, barefoot on the marble floor. No jewelry, no symbols of rank. He didn't need them. Everything about him screamed apex predator. High Alpha Darius, Thornwood said, bowing his head in submission. I present Kiera Ashwood, as requested. Those silver eyes fixed on me, and I felt the weight of his attention like a physical force. Every instinct I had screamed at me to look away, to submit, to make myself small and unthreatening. I met his gaze instead. Something flickered across his face, surprise, definitely, and something else I couldn't name. He took a step closer, then another, until he stood directly in front of me. This close, I could smell him, cedar and snow and something wild that made my head spin. You don't fear me, he observed. Not a question. A statement of fact. I'm terrified of you, I corrected. But showing it won't change what happens next, so why bother? The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Interesting. He circled me slowly, the same way Dr. Reeves had. But this felt different. Not clinical. Hunting. 18 years old. Wolfless. Infertile. From a strong bloodline but completely human in every measurable way. Do you know why you're here? Kiera Ashwood? The use of my first name, intimate, possessive, made something in my stomach twist. Your beta said you've been looking for someone like me. Someone who's broken. Not broken, Darius said softly, stopping directly behind me. I felt his breath on the back of my neck, felt the heat radiating from his body. Unique. There hasn't been a wolfless child born to alpha bloodlines in over 300 years. The genetic probability is essentially 0, which means your existence is either an impossible statistical anomaly, he moved to face me again, those silver eyes burning, or you're exactly what I've been searching for, proof that the old stories are true. What old stories? The ones about humans who could control wolves without being wolves themselves. The ones about a power that existed before the moon goddess created shifters. The ones that have been systematically erased from every historical record I can find. He tilted his head, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Tell me, Kiera, have you ever made a wolf do something against its will? Have you ever spoken a command and had it obeyed by a shifter, even though you have no alpha authority? I thought back to all the times pack members had seemed confused by their own reactions to me, the way wolves sometimes hesitated when I spoke, even though they had no reason to. The strange incidents that I'd always attributed to luck or coincidence. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe. I thought I was imagining it. You weren't. Darius stepped back, gesturing down the corridor. Come. We have much to discuss, and I find I'm curious about you, Kiera Ashwood. Very curious indeed. He turned and walked deeper into the palace, clearly expecting me to follow. I looked back at Thornwood. The beta gave me the smallest nod, not quite encouragement, but acknowledgement. You're on your own now. I adjusted the strap of my canvas bag on my shoulder and followed the high alpha into the darkness, each step taking me further from everything I'd ever known and closer to whatever truth he'd brought me here to find. Behind us, the elevator doors closed with a soft chime. There was no going back now. If Kiera's journey is breaking your heart the way it's breaking mine, hit that subscribe button, because girls like Kiera, the ones discarded by their own families, the ones told they're worthless, they deserve witnesses. They deserve people who won't look away when the world tries to erase them. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever been the one nobody wanted? The mistake everyone tried to hide? Because Kiera needs to know she's not alone in this. And honestly, so do you. Chapter 3. The Beast Beneath. The High Alpha's private chambers were a study in contrasts. The main room was vast, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire northern territories. I could see for miles endless forests blanketed in snow, mountains jutting up like broken teeth. And far below, the lights of the Citadel complex glittering like a constellation brought to Earth. The furnishings were sparse but exquisite. A massive desk, carved from a single piece of dark wood. Bookshelves that climbed to the vaulted ceiling. Leather chairs positioned near a fireplace, where flames danced without any visible fuel source. But beneath the elegance, there was something raw, feral. Deep gouges scarred the marble floor, the kind made by claws that should never have been indoors. One entire wall was bare stone, the mountain itself exposed, with scratch marks that went up 20 feet, impossible for any human or wolf to reach. And the smell. Beneath the cedar and snow, there was something else, something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Not quite wolf, not quite human. Something other. Darius moved to a sideboard and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. Sit, he said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs. I remained standing. I'd rather not. He turned, one eyebrow raised. In his hand, the glass caught the firelight, turning the liquid to molten gold. Is this defiance, or just stubbornness? Self-preservation. Every instinct I have says sitting down in front of a predator is a bad idea. That almost smile flickered across his face again. Smart. He set down the glasses and leaned against the desk, crossing his arms. Very well. Stand if you prefer. But you might want to brace yourself for what I'm about to tell you. I've been traded away by my family, poked and prodded like livestock, and brought to a mountain fortress to meet an alpha whose eyes shouldn't exist. I think I'm already braced. Are you? Those silver eyes pinned me in place. Tell me, Kiera, what do you know about the Forgotten War? I searched my memory. There was a great war before the territories were unified. Different packs fighting for dominance. It lasted decades and nearly destroyed shifter civilization. The council was formed to prevent it from happening again. That's the sanitized version. They teach children. The truth is far more interesting and far more dangerous. Darius pushed off from the desk and began to pace, his movements restless, barely contained. The Forgotten War wasn't between shifter packs. It was between shifters and something else. Something that had the power to control us, to command us, to strip away our free will with nothing more than their voice. My mouth went dry. That's not possible. Shifters answer only to rank and dominance. Now yes, but 500 years ago? He stopped at the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. 500 years ago, there was another kind of power. Humans. A specific bloodline of humans who could speak in a frequency that bypassed our consciousness and went straight to the wolf. They called themselves speakers, and they ruled over shifters like gods. The stories say the moon goddess created wolves to protect humanity. The stories lie. He turned to face me, and in the firelight, his eyes seemed to burn brighter. The moon goddess didn't create wolves. she created a defense against the speakers. She took human bloodlines and gave them the ability to shift, to access animal instinct and strength, hoping it would make them immune to speaker commands. It worked. Partially. Shifters could resist speakers better than regular humans, but we were never truly free of their influence. I thought of all the times I'd spoken and wolves had obeyed without understanding why. All the moments I'd attributed to luck or coincidence. You think I'm one of these speakers? I think, Darius said carefully, that you carry the bloodline. Whether the power is active or dormant remains to be seen. That's what I intend to discover. And if I am? If I have this power? Then you're the first speaker born in over 300 years. And you're either the most valuable asset in the territories, his expression darkened, or the most dangerous threat to every shifter alive. The weight of his words settled over me like a shroud. Is that why I'm wolfless? Because I'm supposed to be something else? Perhaps. Or perhaps your wolf is there but suppressed by the speaker gene. Dr. Reeves said your activation marker is dormant, not absent. That suggests both bloodlines are present, locked in some kind of stalemate. He moved closer, each step deliberate. Tell me what happened on your 18th birthday, when you failed to shift. Every detail, no matter how small. I didn't want to revisit that night. It had been the worst night of my life. The death of every hope, every dream, every possibility for belonging. But something in his voice compelled honesty. It was a full moon. The pack gathered in the ceremonial clearing like always. My sister had shifted 3 months earlier, and everyone expected me to be even stronger because I was older, firstborn. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the fire. My father performed the traditional blessing. My mother painted the moon symbols on my skin. When midnight came, I walked to the center of the circle and waited. What did you feel? Nothing. Everyone else described it like a storm building inside them, this pressure that had to break free. I felt empty, hollow, like there was supposed to be something there, but it had been scooped out and replaced with air. I closed my eyes, but the memory played behind my eyelids anyway. I stood there for an hour. The pack kept waiting, thinking maybe it just needed more time. My father tried to trigger it with his alpha command. Nothing worked. Eventually, people started leaving. By dawn, it was just my family and me, and they couldn't even look at me. When I opened my eyes, Darius was standing directly in front of me. I hadn't heard him move. Did anyone touch you during the ceremony? Speak words that seemed strange or out of place? My grandmother came to see me before it started. She was too sick to attend the actual ceremony, but she insisted on seeing me first. I remembered her frail hands gripping mine, the fevered brightness in her eyes. She said my wolf was sleeping, that it would wake when the time was right. She made me promise to remember that I wasn't broken, just different. Your grandmother. Darius's voice had gone very quiet. What was her maiden name? I don't know. She married into the Ashwood pack before my father was born. Why? Because I think your grandmother knew exactly what you are. I think she recognized the signs and tried to warn you. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and touched the silver locket hanging around my neck. May I? I nodded, and he opened it with careful fingers. Inside were 2 pictures, one of my grandmother as a young woman, beautiful and fierce, and one of a symbol I'd never understood. 3 interlocking circles with a crescent moon in the center. Darius's expression shifted to something almost like awe. This is the mark of the speaker families. The 3 circles represent the triad of power: body, mind, and voice. The crescent represents the incomplete moon power that waxes and wanes, but never truly disappears. If my grandmother knew, why didn't she tell me? Why let me suffer thinking I was defective? Protection, most likely. If anyone discovered what you were, you'd be killed immediately. The council has standing orders to eliminate any potential speaker bloodlines on sight. It's the first law written into our founding documents. He closed the locket gently. Your grandmother kept you safe the only way she could, by keeping you ignorant. But you're part of the council, the High Alpha. If there are orders to kill speakers, why am I still alive? Those silver eyes met mine, and in them, I saw something I hadn't expected: pain. Old pain, the kind that had scarred over but never truly healed. Because I'm not like other shifters, Darius said softly. I'm not even really a wolf. Before I could process that statement, his form began to change. I'd seen shifters transform hundreds of times. It was usually quick, a ripple of power, a blur of motion, and suddenly a wolf stood where a human had been. Painful, yes, but over in seconds. This was nothing like that. Darius's transformation was slow, agonizing. His bones cracked and reformed with sounds like gunshots. His skin rippled and tore, fur erupting in patches. His face elongated into something that was neither human nor wolf but trapped horribly between. He fell to his hands and knees, silver eyes blazing with pain and something darker. I should have run. Every survival instinct screamed at me to flee while he was vulnerable, to put as much distance between myself and whatever he was becoming. Instead, I dropped to my knees beside him. What's happening? I reached out instinctively, then froze. Should I? Don't touch. The words came out mangled, half growl, half human. Can't control. But I was already touching him, my hand on his shoulder, and the moment my skin made contact, something happened. The chaotic transformation stopped. Just froze mid-shift, his body suspended between forms, and I felt it, a connection snapping into place like a key turning in a lock, a frequency that resonated between us. Without thinking, without understanding what I was doing, I spoke. Be still. It wasn't loud, barely a whisper, but the command in it, the power reverberated through the room like thunder. Darius's body shuddered once, twice, then began to shift again, but this time it was controlled, smooth. Within seconds, he was fully transformed into. My breath caught. He wasn't a wolf. He was something far older, far more terrifying. Easily 8 feet tall at the shoulder, with fur so black it seemed to absorb light. His head was massive, with jaws that could crush stone. But his eyes were still silver, still conscious, still utterly aware. A dire wolf. The kind from legends, from the old times before the territories, before civilization. The kind that had supposedly gone extinct centuries ago. You're beautiful, I whispered, and meant it. The great beast Darius lowered his head slowly until it was level with mine. His breath was hot against my face, carrying that cedar and snow scent amplified 100-fold. He studied me with those intelligent silver eyes, and I felt the weight of his attention like a physical caress. Then he did something that shocked me to my core. He pressed his massive head against my chest, just over my heart, and made a sound that was almost like a purr. Submission. From the high alpha, from the most powerful shifter in all the territories, to me, the wolfless girl, the broken one. My hand moved without conscious thought, burying itself in his fur. It was softer than I'd imagined, thick and warm. Beneath it, I could feel his heartbeat slower than it should be, stronger, like a drum echoing through earth. I don't understand, I said. What are you? He pulled back and began to shift again. This time, the transformation was quick, painless, perfectly controlled. In moments, Darius stood before me again, naked and unbothered by it, his chest heaving with exertion. I'm a mistake, he said. A genetic throwback to before shifters were refined by the moon goddess. Most alphas have increased size and strength in wolf form. I have this. He gestured at himself. Something that should be extinct, something that requires an enormous amount of will to control. Without constant focus, I could lose myself entirely to the beast, become feral, mindless. But when I touched you, when I spoke, you shifted perfectly, because you commanded it. He grabbed a robe from somewhere and wrapped it around himself, his movements shaky, because in that moment, your speaker bloodline activated, and I had no choice but to obey. Do you understand what that means, Kiera? You controlled me, the high alpha, the beast that every wolf in these territories fears. You brought me to heel with 2 words. I stared at my hands like they belonged to a stranger. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to help. Intent doesn't matter. Power matters, and you have power over me. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Over all of us, potentially. If you can command me, you can command any shifter alive. You're the first speaker in 3 centuries. And you've just proven that the old bloodline still works. So what happens now? I looked up at him. You said the council has orders to kill speakers on sight. Are you going to kill me? Darius was quiet for a long moment, his silver eyes studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Finally he spoke, and his voice was soft, dangerous. No. I'm going to train you. Teach you to control your power so you don't accidentally command every wolf you meet. And in exchange, he moved closer, until we were inches apart. You're going to help me break the curse that made me this way, because if anyone can reach into the core of shifter magic and change it, it's a speaker. And if I refuse, you won't. It wasn't a threat. It was certainty. Because you felt it too, just now. That connection when you touched me. That recognition. Speakers and shifters were never meant to be enemies, Kiera. We were meant to be partners, bound together, 2 halves of one whole. You're talking about mate bonds. I'm talking about something older than mate bonds. Something the moon goddess tried to destroy when she created shifters. His hand came up slowly, giving me every chance to move away, and cupped my cheek. His palm was warm, calloused, and the touch sent electricity racing down my spine. Your wolf is sleeping because it's waiting for permission. Not from the moon, from you, and the speaker inside you. That's insane. Is it? Your grandmother said your wolf would wake when the time was right. Maybe the time is right when you accept both parts of yourself, the shifter bloodline that wants to submit to instinct, and the speaker bloodline that demands control. He leaned in, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. Maybe you need someone who can survive both, who can submit to your commands without losing himself, who can challenge the speaker while protecting the wolf. You're saying you want to be that person. I'm saying I'm the only person who can be. Any other wolf would either try to dominate you or be destroyed by your power. I'm the only one strong enough to meet you as an equal. My mind raced. This was too much, too fast. Hours ago, I'd been the pack's shame, the broken daughter no one wanted. Now I was supposedly some legendary power that could control all shifters, and the High Alpha himself was offering to. What? Train me? Bind himself to me? I need time, I said, to process this, to understand what I am. Of course. Darius stepped back, giving me space. But time is a luxury we may not have. If the council discovers what you are before you can control your power, they'll move against both of us. I've kept my true form secret for years by maintaining absolute control. But now that you're here, now that you've touched me. He shook his head. The beast inside me recognizes you, craves you. It's going to be harder to hide. How long? Weeks if we're lucky. Days if we're not. The council meets in 1 month. They'll want to see you, to verify you're just a wolfless servant. If they suspect the truth. He didn't need to finish the sentence. I thought of Dr. Reeves and her hungry eyes, of Beta Thornwood's calculating gaze, of all the wolves in the Citadel who would see me as either a threat to be eliminated or a weapon to be controlled. Where will I stay? I asked, forcing myself to focus on practical matters before I drowned in existential terror. Here. In the palace. I'll tell the household staff you're a personal assistant rare for someone wolfless, but not unheard of. Your quarters will be adjacent to mine. We'll begin training tomorrow night. Why night? Because that's when my control is weakest. When the beast is closest to the surface. If you can command me then, you can command me always. He moved to a doorway I hadn't noticed before and opened it, revealing a smaller room beyond. These will be your chambers. There's a bathroom, a closet, everything you'll need. Food will be brought to you 3 times daily. You're not permitted to leave the palace level without my explicit permission or an escort. Understood? Am I a guest or a prisoner? You're something far more dangerous than either. You're a secret. His silver eyes caught the firelight. Get some rest, Kiera Ashwood. Tomorrow night, we'll see if you're strong enough to tame a monster. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. That silver knife your sister gave you, keep it close. If I ever lose control completely, if the beast takes over and I become a threat to you, don't hesitate. cut deep and fast. It's the only thing that can stop me. You want me to kill you if necessary. I want you to survive, he corrected, no matter the cost. Then he was gone, disappearing deeper into the palace, leaving me alone in chambers that were more luxurious than anywhere I'd ever lived, and more isolated than any prison. I walked into the room that was now mine, and closed the door, leaning against it as my legs finally gave out. I slid down to the floor, my canvas bag clutched against my chest, and tried to process everything that had just happened. I was a speaker. Some kind of legendary human who could control wolves with my voice. The High Alpha was a dire wolf, something that shouldn't exist, and he wanted me to help him break a curse. My wolf wasn't missing. It was sleeping. Waiting. And somewhere deep inside my chest, in a place I'd thought was hollow and empty, something stirred. Like a giant eye opening after a long slumber. Like a creature uncurling from centuries of sleep. Not my wolf. Something else. Something that had been waiting for this exact moment. I pulled out my grandmother's locket and opened it, staring at the symbol I now understood. 3 circles. Body, mind, and voice. The incomplete moon. What am I? I whispered to her picture, but grandmother was long dead, and the only person who could answer that question was the monster sleeping somewhere in the rooms beyond, dreaming his cursed dreams. I touched the silver knife hidden in my bag, and wondered if I'd have the strength to use it when the time came. Then I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, knowing that nightmares were waiting, knowing that some of them would be real. Chapter 4. The first lesson. I didn't sleep. How could I, knowing what I now knew? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Darius's agonizing transformation, felt the moment my voice had commanded him to stillness, remembered the weight of that massive direwolf head pressed against my chest, in what could only be described as reverence, or recognition. By the time pale dawn light filtered through the windows of my new chambers, I'd worn a path in the plush carpet from pacing. I'd unpacked my meager belongings, books arranged on the shelf provided, clothes hung in a closet designed for someone with an actual wardrobe, my journal hidden under the mattress out of instinct. The silver knife stayed within reach on the nightstand, gleaming in the morning light like a promise. Or a threat. A knock on the door made me jump. "Miss Ashwood?" A female voice, cautious. "I've brought breakfast." I opened the door to find a young woman girl. Really, she couldn't be more than 16, holding a silver tray laden with food. She had the telltale gold flicker in her eyes that marked her as a shifter, but her scent was muted, submissive. Omega, probably. Assigned to servant duties. "Thank you," I said, taking the tray. "What's your name?" She blinked, clearly surprised I'd asked. "Luna, miss. If you need anything, there's a bell pull by your bed. I'm assigned to this wing." "Luna." I gestured for her to come in, setting the tray on the small table by the window. "Can I ask you something?" She stepped inside hesitantly, her body language screaming discomfort. Being alone with someone wolfless probably violated every instinct she had. We were weak, vulnerable, wrong, but she was too well trained to refuse. "What's the High Alpha like?" I asked. "Really like, I mean, not the official version." Luna's eyes went wide, and she glanced at the door like she expected Darius to materialize. "I shouldn't, it's not my place to. I'm not asking you to gossip. I'm asking because I'll be working closely with him, and I need to understand." I softened my voice, made it gentle rather than commanding. The last thing I wanted was to accidentally activate whatever speaker power I supposedly possessed. "Please. I'm scared. And I'm alone. And anything you can tell me would help." Something in my honesty must have reached her, because Luna's shoulders relaxed slightly. "He's intense. Demands perfection, but isn't cruel about it. Keeps to himself mostly, no personal relationships, no favorites, no weakness anyone can exploit. The staff respects him, but we're also terrified of him." "Why terrified?" "Because we've all heard him, late at night, from the restricted wing. Sounds that aren't quite human, aren't quite wolf. Like something's trying to claw its way out from inside him." She lowered her voice to barely a whisper. "There are rumors, he's cursed. That the moon goddess herself punished him for some ancient sin. That he's slowly losing the battle to stay in control." My skin prickled. Has he ever hurt anyone? Not that I know of. But there was an incident, years ago, before I came here. A visiting alpha challenged him publicly, questioned his fitness to lead. They say the high alpha transformed right there in the council chamber, not into a normal wolf, but into something else. Something massive and terrible. The challenger fled and was never seen again. No one's dared challenge him since, so the council knew, or at least suspected, that Darius wasn't a normal shifter. They allowed him to lead because they were too afraid to oppose him. That wasn't stability, that was a powder keg waiting for a spark, and I was apparently that spark. "Thank you, Luna," I said. "You've been very helpful." She bobbed a quick curtsy and fled, clearly relieved to escape. I listened to her footsteps fade down the corridor, then turned to the breakfast she'd brought. The food was exquisite fresh fruit, pastries that melted on the tongue, eggs cooked to perfection, the kind of meal I'd never been served at home, where I'd usually eaten after everyone else, picking at leftovers. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing, my mind racing. Darius needed me to help break his curse. But what curse, exactly? Was he born as a direwolf throwback, or had something transformed him? And why did he believe a speaker, a power he supposedly feared enough to have standing kill orders, could help him? Unless he was lying. Unless this was all elaborate manipulation to control the first speaker born in centuries, to keep me close and compliant until he decided what to do with me. But I'd felt that moment of connection when I'd touched him. Felt his submission, genuine and complete, when I'd commanded him to be still. Whatever else Darius was, he'd been telling the truth about that. I had power over him. Real power. The question was, did I have the courage to use it? The day passed in suffocating isolation. I tried to read, but the words swam on the page. I tried to write in my journal, but every sentence came out wrong, inadequate to capture the impossibility of my situation. Mostly, I stared out the window at the northern territories spread below, and wondered if my family ever thought about me, if Vera felt guilty, if my father regretted his choice. Probably not. I was the problem that had solved itself. After all, as the sun began to set, painting the snow-covered mountains in shades of blood and gold, I felt it, a change in the air pressure, like the moment before a storm breaks. The hair on my arms stood up, and something deep in my chest responded with a resonance I didn't understand. He was coming. I'd changed into the simplest clothes. I owned dark pants, a loose shirt, boots that would allow movement. If tonight was going to be some kind of training session, I needed to be practical, not decorative. I pulled my hair back into a tight braid and tucked the silver knife into my boot, hidden but accessible. When the knock came, I was ready. Or as ready as I'd ever be. Darius stood in the doorway, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. He was dressed for combat or something like it. Leather pants that looked custom-fitted, bare-chested despite the mountain cold, his dark hair unbound and wild around his face. But it was his eyes that caught me. They weren't quite silver anymore. They were flickering, oscillating between silver and something darker. Something feral. "The beast is close tonight," he said without preamble. His voice was rougher than yesterday, like he was speaking around teeth that didn't quite fit his mouth. "Good. You need to learn to control me at my worst, not my best. Where are we going?" "The restricted wing, where I can lose control without endangering the entire citadel." He turned and started walking, clearly expecting me to follow. "Come. And Kiera? If at any point you feel genuinely threatened, run. Don't hesitate, don't try to reason with me. Just run and seal the doors behind you. There's a panic room at the end of the hall. Code is 1847. Lock yourself in and don't come out until morning." That's not exactly inspiring confidence. It's not supposed to inspire confidence. It's supposed to keep you alive. He glanced back at me, and in the dying light, his eyes reflected like an animal's. "I meant what I said last night. Your survival matters more than mine. Remember that." We walked through corridors I hadn't seen before, each one darker and more isolated than the last. The temperature dropped as we descended, not stairs exactly, but a gentle downward slope that took us deeper into the mountain. The polished marble gave way to raw stone, and the electric lights became torches burning with that same impossible fire from the fireplace. Finally, we reached a massive door made of solid steel, covered in symbols I didn't recognize. Darius placed his palm against a scanner, and with a groan of hydraulics, the door swung open. Beyond was a room that made my stomach clench. It was huge, easily 100 feet in diameter, with a ceiling that vanished into darkness overhead. The walls were the same raw stone as the corridors, but they were scored with deep gouges, some of them cutting a foot into solid rock. Blood stained the floor in places, old and dried but never fully cleaned away. And in the center of the room sat a single chair, reinforced with steel bars and equipped with restraints that looked like they could hold down a vehicle. "What is this place?" I whispered. "My prison," Darius said simply. "Where I come when I feel control slipping, where I can let the beast out without destroying everything I've built." He walked to the center of the room, his bare feet silent on the stone. "Tonight, you're going to learn the first lesson of being a speaker. How to give a command that cannot be refused. I don't know how. Last night was instinct. Instinct is exactly right. Speakers don't learn their power, they remember it. It's genetic memory, passed down through bloodlines, waiting for the right circumstances to activate." He stopped at the chair but didn't sit, instead turning to face me fully. "The key is understanding what you're commanding. A wolf has two minds, human and beast. Normal alpha commands work on the human side, forcing obedience through hierarchical pressure. But speaker commands bypass all that. They go straight to the beast, to the primal core that existed before language, before civilization. How do I access that? You stop thinking like a human and start feeling like a predator. You reach into that hollow place inside you, the one you think is empty because your wolf never came, and you pull from it. That hollowness isn't absence, Kiera. It's potential. It's the space where your power lives." I thought about the sensation from last night, that moment when I'd touched him and felt something click into place. The resonance, the certainty. "Show me," I said. "Transform. Let me see what I'm supposed to control." Darius smiled, and there was something wild in it. Eager. "As you wish." This time, he didn't fight the transformation. He surrendered to it, and I watched in horrified fascination as his body exploded outward. Bones cracking and reforming, muscles tearing and rebuilding, skin splitting to reveal the massive direwolf beneath. But something was different from last night. This transformation was faster, more violent, less controlled, and when it finished, when the 8-foot beast stood before me with silver eyes blazing, I saw the crucial difference. He wasn't fully present. The intelligence I'd seen before was dimmed, submerged beneath layers of instinct and hunger. This was the beast ascendant, with Darius clinging to consciousness by his fingernails. The direwolf's lips pulled back, revealing teeth as long as my fingers. A growl rumbled from his chest, so deep I felt it in my bones. He took a step toward me, then another, his massive body moving with predatory grace. Every human instinct screamed at me to run. Instead, I held my ground and reached for that hollow place inside me, the space where my wolf should have been, and I felt it not emptiness, but something vast and sleeping, coiled like a serpent waiting to strike. "Darius," I said, and my voice came out different, layered, as if something else was speaking through me. "Stop." The direwolf froze mid-step, one massive paw suspended in air. His whole body trembled with the effort of fighting whatever compulsion I'd just laid on him, but he couldn't move, couldn't advance. I felt it then, the connection snapping taut between us like a cord made of pure will. I could sense his consciousness, feel the battle raging inside him as the beast fought for dominance, and the human struggled to maintain control. And I understood, with sudden clarity, that I could tip the balance either way. I could push the beast down, force Darius back into full control, or I could pull the beast forward, let it consume him entirely. The power was intoxicating, terrifying. I'd spent 18 years being powerless, being the weak one, the broken one, and now, with a single word, I could break the most powerful shifter in existence. "Kiera." Darius's voice emerged from the beast's throat, strained and desperate. "Don't. Get drunk on it. The power. It's addictive. It will corrupt you." He was right. I could feel it, the temptation to push, to test the limits of what I could make him do. To prove that I wasn't weak, wasn't worthless, wasn't the broken girl my pack had thrown away. With tremendous effort, I pulled back, released the command. You can move. The dire wolf shuddered and immediately backed away, putting distance between us. Then he began to shift again, but this time it was all wrong, too fast, too chaotic. He was losing his grip, the beast trying to reassert control, even as the human fought to surface. Darius, I stepped forward without thinking. Focus on my voice, follow it back. But he couldn't hear me. The transformation was stuck, his body caught in that horrible in-between state, and I could see the pain in those silver eyes as both sides of him tore at each other for dominance. I did the only thing I could think of. I closed the distance between us and placed both hands on his malformed face. Ignoring the heat of his skin, the wrongness of his half-transformed features. Be human, I commanded, putting every ounce of will I possessed into the words. Be Darius, come back. The power flowed through me like lightning, and I felt it the exact moment the speaker command overrode everything else. Forcing his body to comply, the transformation completed in a rush, and suddenly I was holding a human face instead of a beast's muzzle. Darius collapsed against me, his full weight driving us both to our knees. He was shaking, gasping for breath, his skin fever-hot and slicked with sweat. I've got you, I murmured, and was surprised to find I meant it. This man, this monster who'd bought me like property, who represented everything I should fear, I was holding him like something precious. You're okay, you're human, you're here. That was. He pulled back enough to look at me, and his eyes were pure silver again, fully his own. That was extraordinary. You didn't just command the beast, you commanded both sides of me at once. Forced unity, where there should be war. Is that what the curse is? You can't reconcile your human and beast sides? It's more complicated than that. He stood on shaky legs, offering me a hand up. But yes, essentially. The dire wolf form is too powerful, too primitive. It wants to consume the human entirely. Every transformation is a battle to come back. Eventually, maybe in years, maybe in months, I'll lose that battle. I'll become dire wolf permanently, and the human will die. And you think I can stop that? How? Because speakers were originally created to be bonds for shifters, not masters, partners. The moon goddess took that away when she reformed shifter magic, severed the bond so wolves could be independent. But the genetic memory is still there, in both our bloodlines. If we can reforge that bond. He stopped, suddenly looking uncertain, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. If we can connect the way speakers and shifters were meant to, maybe it will give me an anchor. Something to hold on to when the beast tries to take over. You're talking about a permanent bond, like mates. Similar, but older, deeper. Mate bonds are romantic, chosen. Speaker bonds are fundamental, soul deep. Once forged, they can't be broken except by death. I stared at him, trying to process what he was asking. You want me to bind myself to you, forever? To be responsible for keeping your beast under control for the rest of our lives? Yes. That's insane. I'm 18 years old. I barely understand what I am, and you want me to tie my entire existence to yours? I know it's unfair. I know you deserve better than being a cage for a monster. But Kiara, he reached out and took my hand, his fingers gentle despite the calluses. You're the first speaker in 3 centuries. If you die, that power dies with you. The council will make sure of it. They'll eliminate anyone connected to you, purge the bloodline entirely. But if you're bound to me, if you're under my protection with a legitimate purpose for existing, they can't touch you. So this isn't just about saving you. It's about saving me too. It's about saving both of us. And maybe... He hesitated, and for a moment, he looked young, lost. Maybe finding something that was taken from both our bloodlines. Connection, purpose, belonging. The words hit harder than they should have. Belonging. That's all I'd ever wanted, to belong somewhere. To someone. To be valued for what I was, rather than rejected for what I wasn't. But binding myself to Darius meant accepting that I'd never have a normal life. Never have choices. Never be free to discover who I could become without a monster's leash around my neck. Except, was that really different from what I'd already lost? I'd never had freedom in my pack. Never had choices. I'd been trapped by my wolflessness just as surely as Darius was trapped by his beast. At least this trap came with power, with purpose, with someone who looked at me and saw potential instead of failure. I need time, I said finally, to learn control, to understand what I am. I'm not saying no, but I'm not saying yes either. Not yet. Fair enough. Darius released my hand and stepped back, giving me space. We'll continue training, every night, until you're strong enough to control me, even at my worst. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, we'll perform the binding ritual. And if the council discovers what I am before then? His expression hardened, and I saw the high alpha emerge, the leader who'd held power through fear and strength. Then I'll do what I've always done. Whatever is necessary to survive, even if that means declaring war on the council itself. The casual way he said it, war against the most powerful governing body in the territories, should have terrified me. Instead, it was oddly comforting. Whatever else Darius was, he was committed. He'd fight for me, protect me, even against impossible odds. No one had ever fought for me before. Same time tomorrow? I asked, and was surprised to find I meant it. Despite the fear, despite the danger, some part of me was eager to return, to explore this power, to see what else I could do. Same time, he confirmed. But Kiera? Tonight went better than I expected. You have good instincts, but don't let your guard down. The beast knows you now. It knows you can control it. And it's going to fight back. What do you mean? I mean, the next time you command me, the direwolf will try to resist. It will test you, push against your will, look for weaknesses. You need to be stronger, more certain, because if you hesitate, if you show even a moment of doubt, his silver eyes bored into mine. That's when it will strike. A chill ran down my spine. Will you still be in control? If it strikes? I don't know, he admitted. That's what makes this dangerous. For both of us. He walked me back to my chambers, maintaining a careful distance, his posture rigid with the effort of staying in control. When we reached my door, he paused. You did well tonight, better than I hoped. Sleep well, Kiera Ashwood. You too, I said, then felt foolish. He probably never slept well. How could he, with a monster constantly trying to claw its way out? He smiled like he knew what I was thinking, then disappeared down the hall, moving with that liquid grace that marked him as predator even in human form. I locked my door and leaned against it, my heart still racing from the night's events. In the span of 24 hours, I'd gone from worthless to invaluable, from powerless to commanding the most powerful shifter alive. And I had no idea if that was salvation or damnation. I pulled out my journal and began to write, trying to capture everything before the memories faded. But my hand shook too badly to form coherent sentences, so instead I drew sketching the direwolf from memory. Those massive jaws and silver eyes, the raw power contained in that impossible form. When I finished, I stared at the drawing and felt that hollow place inside me stir again, responding to the image, recognizing it, wanting it. What am I becoming? I whispered to the empty room, but the only answer was silence, and the distant sound of something howling in the restricted wing, something that might have been Darius, or might have been the beast, dreaming of freedom. Chapter 5. The Deepening Bond. 3 weeks passed in a blur of sleepless days and dangerous nights. Every evening as the sun set, Darius would come for me, and we'd descend to the restricted wing. Every night, I'd push myself further, testing the limits of my speaker power while he tested the limits of his control. And every night, the beast fought harder. It started subtly. The second night, when I commanded him to shift, there was a lag, maybe half a second, where nothing happened, where I felt resistance pushing back against my will. The third night, the dire wolf snarled at me, showing teeth, before finally obeying. By the end of the first week, every command was a battle, my will against something ancient and feral that was learning to recognize the chains I was wrapping around it, and learning to hate me for them. You're getting stronger, Darius said one night, after a particularly brutal training session. We sat on opposite sides of the restricted wing, both of us exhausted. He was human again, wrapped in a robe, his hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. 3 weeks ago, It took everything you had to make me stop mid-transformation. Tonight, you held me in wolf form for 20 minutes against the beast's full resistance. It doesn't feel like progress. It feels like every night gets harder. I rubbed my temples, trying to ease the headache that always came after extended use of my power. It was like a muscle I'd never used before necessary, growing stronger, but the development was painful. That's because the beast is adapting, learning your patterns, finding the edges of your control. He stood and moved closer, settling down a few feet away, close enough to talk quietly, far enough to maintain safety. But you're adapting too. Your commands are more precise now, more layered. Tonight when you told me to be calm, you weren't just commanding my body, you were commanding my emotional state, my neurochemistry. That level of fine control is remarkable for someone who's only been training for 3 weeks. I thought about the moment he was describing. I'd felt the difference myself. Instead of a blunt instrument forcing obedience, it had been more like adjusting the strings of a musical instrument until the note rang true, finding the exact frequency that would resonate with his beast and make it settle. My grandmother's locket has been getting warm, I said, pulling it out from beneath my shirt. The silver glowed faintly in the torchlight, and the 3 interlocking circles seemed to pulse with their own rhythm, like it's responding to something. Does that mean anything? Darius leaned forward, studying the locket with intense focus. May I? I unclasped it and handed it over. The moment it left my skin, I felt the loss, a subtle absence I hadn't noticed accumulating. Like part of my power had been stored in the metal itself. He turned it over in his hands, examining the symbols with reverence. This isn't just a marker of speaker heritage, it's an amplifier. See these inner markings? He traced a pattern I'd never noticed, too small to see without close inspection. This is old magic, pre-goddess. The kind of thing that should have been destroyed centuries ago when the council purged all speaker artifacts. My grandmother wore it every day of her life. If it's so dangerous, why didn't anyone notice? Because it only activates in the presence of active speaker power. To everyone else, it's just jewelry. But to you, he handed it back, and the moment I touched it, warmth flooded through me. To you, it's a battery, storing excess power when you're not using it, ready to amplify your commands when you need extra strength. I clasped it around my neck again, feeling the weight settle against my chest like a second heartbeat. Will I need extra strength? His expression darkened. The council meeting is in 1 week. They'll want to see you, interview you, verify you're just a wolfless servant. Beta Thornwood will be there, and he's not stupid. If he suspects anything, he already knows. I interrupted. He had to know what I was when he came to collect me. The way he talked about me being unique, the special notation in my contract. He knew, Darius. I know. But there's a difference between suspecting and confirming. As long as we can maintain plausible deniability, as long as you appear to be nothing more than a curiosity, we're safe. But if you accidentally command someone in front of the council, if your power manifests where they can see it. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Then they'll kill us both. They'll try. The certainty in his voice was chilling. I've spent years building power, establishing alliances, creating contingencies. If it comes to war, I won't go down easily. But Kiera, I can't protect you if you're not ready. You need to learn to suppress your power, to hide what you are even under pressure. How? Every time I'm near shifters I can feel their wolves. It's like hearing 1,000 conversations at once, all in a language I'm only just learning to understand. How do I ignore that? You don't ignore it. You learn to listen without responding, to feel without commanding. He shifted closer, and I caught his scent, cedar and snow, familiar now after weeks of proximity. Close your eyes. I obeyed, and immediately felt vulnerable, exposed. But I trusted him. Somewhere over the past 3 weeks, that trust had grown from necessity to something deeper. Right now, Darius said softly, his voice coming from directly in front of me. You can feel my wolf. Describe it. I reached out with that new sense, the one that had awakened the first night I'd commanded him. It's vast, powerful, like a storm barely contained. But there's structure to it, layers of control you've built over years. And beneath all that, the beast. Hungry, angry, wanting out. Good. Now, without opening your eyes, without commanding it, try to soothe it, not with power, with intent, like you're calming a frightened animal. The beast isn't frightened, it's furious. Because it's trapped. Because it's been suppressed and denied and forced down for so long that rage is all it knows. But underneath the rage is the same thing that drives any caged creature. Fear. Fear of disappearing, of being erased, of never being allowed to truly exist. I thought about that, about spending my entire existence locked away while someone else lived my life. About the suffocating frustration of having no voice, no agency, no freedom to be what I was meant to be. I knew exactly how that felt. Instead of reaching with power, I reached with understanding, with empathy. I touched that part of Darius that was all beast, and whispered not with words, but with feeling. I see you. I know what it's like to be denied, to be called broken for existing. The response was immediate and shocking. The beast's rage dimmed, replaced by something I didn't expect: curiosity, interest, and beneath that, a desperate, aching loneliness that made my chest constrict with sympathetic pain. The direwolf had been alone inside Darius's mind for years, centuries maybe, if what he said about genetic memory was true, conscious but unable to communicate, powerful but perpetually suppressed, wanting connection but feared by the only person who could provide it. Oh, I breathed, tears pricking behind my closed eyelids. Darius, your beast isn't trying to destroy you, it's trying to be known, to be accepted. It's been reaching for you this whole time, and you've been pushing it away. When I opened my eyes, Darius was staring at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Shock? Wonder? Fear? What did you do? His voice was hoarse. I felt the beast just... It calmed. Without force. Without command. It chose to settle. I talked to it. Not with speaker power, with empathy. With recognition. I reached out slowly and took his hand. His fingers were trembling. You've been fighting a war inside yourself for so long that you forgot there might be another option. What if you're not supposed to suppress the beast? What if you're supposed to integrate it? That's impossible. The direwolf form is too powerful, too primitive, too honest. I interrupted. That's what scares you. The beast doesn't know how to lie, how to hide, how to be anything other than exactly what it is. And you've spent years building masks, creating personas, becoming the high alpha everyone expects. The beast threatens all of that. His hand tightened on mine. If I let it integrate, if I stop fighting, I'll lose myself. Or you'll find yourself. The self you were supposed to be before you learned that what you are is something to fear. We sat in silence for a long moment, hands clasped, breathing synchronized. I could feel his wolf, no, his beast, his direwolf self hovering in that space between us. Curious, cautious, wanting desperately to be accepted but terrified of rejection. Just like me. Just like I'd always been. The binding ritual, Darius said finally. What I told you about, it's not just about giving me an anchor. It's about creating a bridge between human and beast, between suppression and integration, between what I am and what I could be. And you need me for that because I can't do it alone. The beast won't trust me. Why would it? I've been its jailer for years. But you, he looked at me with those silver eyes that were no longer quite so alien. You see it. Accept it. You're not afraid of what it is. I'm terrified of what it is, I corrected. I'm just more terrified of what I am. At least you know you're powerful. I'm still figuring out if I'm a person or a weapon. You're both. Just like I am. He released my hand and stood, offering me help up. The binding ritual has to be performed under a full moon. That gives us exactly 6 days. 6 days to prepare, to strengthen your control, to make sure you're ready for what comes next. What does come next? What happens in the ritual? I don't know exactly. The records were destroyed during the purge, but the fragments I found suggest it's a complete merging of consciousness. You'll be in my head. I'll be in yours. No secrets, no barriers, no protection. You'll see everything I am, including the parts I've hidden from everyone, including myself. And I'll see you the same way. The intimacy of that, the absolute vulnerability made my stomach clench. That's more than mate bonds. It's more than anything that exists in modern shifter culture. It's older, more fundamental, and once it's done, it can't be undone. Are you sure you want this, Kiera? Because once we start down this path, there's no going back to who we were before. Was I sure? 6 weeks ago, I'd been the broken daughter, the shameful secret, the girl with no wolf and no future. Now I was being offered power, purpose, and a connection to someone who understood what it meant to be other. But I'd also be giving up any chance at a normal life. At freedom, at discovering who I could become without being bound to someone else's fate. I don't know, I admitted. Ask me again in 6 days, after I've met the council. After I've seen if I can hide what I am from people who want to kill me for existing. If I survive that, if I can look you in the eye afterward and say yes without doubting myself, then we'll do the ritual. Fair enough. He walked me to the door, his movements careful, controlled. Kiera? Thank you, for seeing the beast as something other than a monster. No one else ever has. Not even you, I pointed out. Especially not me. He smiled, and it was genuine, the first real smile I'd seen from him. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less burdened. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start preparing for the council meeting. I need to teach you how to lie convincingly while surrounded by predators who can smell fear. Wonderful. My favorite activity. He laughed, actually laughed, and the sound echoed down the corridor like something precious and rare. The next 5 days were different from the previous weeks. Instead of combat training in the restricted wing, Darius brought in tutors, protocol specialists who taught me how to address council members, where to stand, when to speak, and more importantly, when to stay silent. Voice coaches who helped me modulate my tone so I didn't accidentally layer commands into casual conversation. Even a meditation instructor, an ancient Omega female who taught me breathing techniques to stay calm under pressure. The council will try to rattle you, she explained during one session. They'll ask invasive questions, challenge your presence, test your emotional control. Alphas are predators. They instinctively target weakness. You must appear calm, deferential, but not afraid. Fear invites attack. How do I appear calm when I'm terrified? You remember that fear is just a chemical response. It can't hurt you unless you let it control you. Breathe through it. Ground yourself in your body. And if all else fails, she leaned in conspiratorially, remember that you could destroy any of them with a single word. That knowledge is power, even if you never use it. I thought about that often over those 5 days. The power I possessed, tucked away and hidden, waiting. Like the silver knife in my boot there if needed, but hopefully unnecessary. Luna, my assigned servant, had been instructed to prepare me for the council meeting. She brought formal clothes, a simple black dress that was elegant without being ostentatious, soft leather shoes that were comfortable but refined. She showed me how to arrange my hair in a way that looked sophisticated but not vain. You look like you belong here, she said, studying me critically on the morning of the meeting. Not pack, not quite human, something in between. Is that good? It's honest. The council values honesty, even when they're lying through their teeth. She adjusted the drape of my dress one final time. The high alpha has been different since you arrived, calmer, more present. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I wanted to tell her that what I was doing might get us all killed. That I was a ticking bomb waiting to explode in the middle of shifter politics. But I just smiled and thanked her for her help. Darius came for me at noon. He was dressed formally, a black suit that fit him perfectly, his hair pulled back in a neat braid, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses that made him look dangerous and untouchable. The high alpha, not the man I'd been training with every night. Ready? He asked. No. But I'm going anyway. Good answer. He offered his arm, and I took it, letting him lead me through corridors I'd never seen before. We climbed rather than descended, rising through level after level until we reached the very top of the citadel. The council chamber was circular, with windows that offered 360-degree views of the territories. 5 massive chairs sat in a semicircle, each carved from a different material: stone, wood, metal, bone, and something that looked disturbingly like petrified flesh. 4 were occupied. I recognized Beta Thornwood immediately, sitting in the metal chair with that same unremarkable appearance and those piercing ice-gray eyes. The others were new to me. An enormous male who had to be close to 7 feet tall occupied the stone chair. His face was brutally scarred, and his eyes were flat gold with no warmth in them. The wooden chair held a female with silver hair despite appearing middle-aged, her posture regal, her expression calculating. In the bone chair sat a thin man with nervous energy, his fingers constantly tapping rhythms only he could hear. The flesh chair was empty, Darius's seat. "Hi, Alpha," Thornwood greeted, his voice perfectly neutral. "Thank you for bringing our guest." "Council," Darius replied with equal neutrality. He guided me to a spot in front of them, then moved to take his own seat. The moment he sat in that chair, something changed. His presence expanded, filling the room with pressure that made my ears pop. The High Alpha, in truth, not just title, and I was alone, standing before 4 of the most powerful shifters in existence, with nothing but my wits and my carefully hidden power to protect me. The female spoke first, her voice cultured and cold. Kiera Ashwood. 18 years old, wolfless, infertile, daughter of Alpha Ronan Ashwood. She consulted a tablet in her lap. "Your medical records are fascinating. All the genetic markers for shifter heritage, yet no ability to transform. How does that feel, I wonder? Being so close to power yet forever denied? Like being hungry and standing outside a restaurant," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You can smell the food, see people enjoying it, but the door is locked and you have no key." The nervous male in the bone chair laughed a sharp, staccato sound. "I like her. She has spirit. Most wolfless humans cower before us. This one has spine. Spirit without power is just arrogance waiting to be crushed." The huge male rumbled. "I question the wisdom of keeping her here, High Alpha. She's a security risk, a weakness someone could exploit." "She's an administrative assistant," Darius said calmly. "She can read and write, which is more than can be said for most servants. Her presence here is practical, not sentimental." "Is it?" Thornwood leaned forward, those ice-gray eyes boring into me. "Tell me, Miss Ashwood, have you noticed anything unusual since arriving at the Citadel? Any strange sensations, unexplained phenomena?" My heart rate spiked, but I kept my breathing even, remembering the meditation instructor's lessons. "Everything here is strange to me," Beta Thornwood. "I've never been more than 20 miles from where I was born. The Citadel itself is the unexplained phenomenon." Clever deflection, but that's not what I asked. He stood and descended from his seat, moving toward me with predatory grace. "I've been watching you, Miss Ashwood. Or rather, I've been having you watched. Do you know what my observers reported?" I couldn't possibly guess. "They reported that you spend every evening in the restricted wing with the High Alpha, that you emerge exhausted, sometimes with headaches that last for hours, that the servants assigned to that wing report strange sounds, commands given in voices that don't quite belong to either of you." He stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "What exactly are you doing down there every night?" The trap was obvious. If I told the truth, I'd expose myself. If I lied and was caught, it would confirm their suspicions. So I did neither. "I'm learning to survive in a world that wasn't made for people like me," I said, layering just enough bitter truth into the words that they rang honest. "The High Alpha is teaching me how to exist among predators without being prey. Surely you, of all people, understand the value of that skill." Something flickered in Thornwood's expression. Approval? Respect? He studied me for a long moment, then turned back to the other council members. "She's hiding something, but I can't prove what. Then we table this discussion," the silver-haired female said. "For now, she stays. If she proves to be a problem, we revisit the matter. Agreed?" The others nodded, though the huge male looked displeased. "One more thing," Thornwood said, still watching me. "The full moon is tomorrow night. I'd like permission to observe your training session, just to satisfy my curiosity about what the High Alpha finds so valuable in a wolfless girl." My blood turned to ice. Tomorrow night was the binding ritual. If Thornwood observed, if he saw what we really were. "Denied," Darius said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "The restricted wing is called that for a reason. Beta Thornwood. No one enters without my explicit permission, and I'm not granting it, not even to you. High Alpha. This matter is closed. Darius stood, and the pressure in the room intensified until I could barely breathe. Unless the council wishes to formally challenge my authority over my own private quarters? The 4 other members exchanged glances. Finally, Thornwood bowed his head slightly. Of course not, High Alpha. I merely wish to observe, and I merely wish to maintain boundaries. We all have secrets, Beta Thornwood. Some of them are meant to stay hidden. The dismissal was clear. The meeting was over. Darius descended from his seat and took my arm again, guiding me from the chamber with controlled urgency. We didn't speak until we were back in the elevator. Doors closed, descending toward the palace level. Then he sagged against the wall, his carefully maintained composure cracking. That was too close, he breathed. Thornwood knows. He doesn't have proof, but he knows something is different about you. So what do? We accelerate the timeline. The binding ritual happens tonight instead of tomorrow. Once it's complete, once we're bonded, your power will be explainable as an extension of our connection. A rare phenomenon, certainly, but not speaker heritage. We can claim you're developing a pseudo-mate bond with me, something that occasionally happens with wolfless humans in close proximity to powerful alphas. Will they believe that? They'll have to, because the alternative is admitting they know what you are and failed to act. The council won't expose their own incompetence. He pushed off from the wall and gripped my shoulders, his silver eyes intense. Kiera, I need to know right now. Are you ready for this? Because once we bind, there's no going back. You'll be mine, and I'll be yours, in a way that transcends anything modern shifters understand. I thought about the past 6 weeks, about everything I'd learned, everything I'd become, about the beast inside Darius that just wanted to be known, and the power inside me that had finally found purpose. I thought about having a choice, real choice, for maybe the first time in my life. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Let's do this before I lose my nerve. He smiled, fierce and bright. Then tonight, under the moon, we become something new. Something that hasn't existed in 500 years. Partners? More than that. He pulled me close, his forehead touching mine, his breath warm against my skin. Equals. Chosen family. 2 halves of one impossible whole. And despite everything, despite the danger, despite the fear, despite the absolute insanity of binding myself to a cursed high alpha I'd known for 6 weeks, I felt something in my chest settle into place, like coming home. Like finally, after 18 years of searching, I'd found where I belonged. Subscribe if you believe broken people deserve to be loved not despite their brokenness, but because of the strength it took to survive it. Because Kiera spent 18 years believing she was worthless, and she needs an audience that sees what Darius sees. Someone extraordinary. Comment below if you've ever met someone who saw your value when everyone else saw your flaws, or if you're still waiting for that person. Because this community, we see you. Just like Darius sees Kiera. You're not invisible here. Chapter 6. The Binding. The ritual had to be performed at the highest point of the citadel, where the moon's power was strongest and unfiltered by stone or glass. Darius led me up a narrow spiral staircase I hadn't known existed, hidden behind a panel in his private chambers. We climbed in silence, the only sound our breathing and the whisper of my dress against the stone steps. He'd changed into simple clothes, loose pants, bare-chested despite the mountain cold, while I remained in the black dress from the council meeting. Something about it felt right, like I was being presented to fate itself. The staircase opened onto a platform carved from the mountain's peak, exposed to the elements and the endless sky. Snow dusted the edges, and wind whipped across the space with enough force to steal my breath. But at the center, protected by some invisible barrier, a circle had been carved into the stone. The same 3 interlocking circles from my grandmother's locket, but massive, each one easily 10 feet in diameter. This is the original binding circle, Darius said, his voice nearly lost to the wind. 500 years old, preserved through magic. I don't fully understand. When the council formed, they tried to destroy all traces of speaker culture, but this, he gestured to the intricate carvings, This was too deeply rooted in the mountain itself. They settled for pretending it didn't exist. The moon hung directly overhead, full and heavy, its light turning everything silver. I could feel it pulling at something inside me, that hollow space where my wolf should have been. Calling to it, awakening it. "What do we do?" I asked, my teeth chattering from cold and nerves. "First, we acknowledge what we're attempting. This isn't a game, Kiera. Once we begin, the magic will take over. It will strip us down to our most fundamental selves and forge a connection between them. Everything we are, every memory, every fear, every secret we've hidden from the world will be laid bare. Are you absolutely certain?" I thought about the council meeting, about Thornwood's suspicious eyes, about Dr. Reeves and her hunger to dissect what made me different. I thought about my pack, my family, everyone who'd looked at me and seen only a mistake that needed to be hidden away. Then I thought about the past 6 weeks, about learning I had power, purpose, a reason for existing that went beyond being someone's shame, about the beast inside Darius that had recognized me, that had pressed its massive head to my chest, in what felt like gratitude for simply being seen. "I'm certain," I said. "Let's do this." Darius nodded and stepped into the circle's center, positioning himself where all 3 loops intersected. He gestured for me to join him. And when I did, I felt it immediately, a hum of power rising from the stone itself, ancient and patient and vast. "Give me your hands," he said, and I placed my palms in his. His skin was fever hot, his pulse racing beneath my fingertips. The ritual requires blood, breath, and spoken vows. We'll cut our palms not deep, just enough to mingle blood. Then we breathe together until our rhythms synchronize. Finally, we speak the binding words. What are the binding words? I don't know exactly. The fragments I found suggested they're different for every bonding, drawn from the individual's true names, not the names we're called, but the names our souls know themselves by. When the moment comes, you'll know what to say. Trust that. He produced a silver blade, not my knife, but something ceremonial, etched with symbols that matched the circle beneath our feet. Without hesitation, he drew it across his left palm, blood welling dark against his skin. Then he offered it to me. I took the blade with shaking hands and pressed it to my own palm. The pain was sharp, immediate, but not unbearable. Blood pooled and dripped between my fingers, and Darius caught my hand before I could pull away. Our wounds pressed together, blood mingling, and the moment our fluids touched, the circle beneath us blazed with light. It was like being struck by lightning made of moonbeams. Power surged through me, not painful but overwhelming, filling every empty space inside me until I thought I might burst apart. I gasped, and Darius pulled me closer, our joined hands trapped between our bodies. "Breathe with me," he commanded, and I did, matching my inhales to his, letting our exhales synchronize. The power settled into a rhythm, pulsing in time with our shared breath, building with each cycle. And then I felt it, his consciousness touching mine. It wasn't like reading someone's mind. It was deeper, more fundamental. I was inside his memory, living it as he had lived it. A child, no more than 6, watching in horror as his first transformation went wrong. Bones breaking and reforming too large, too wrong. His mother screaming. His father, then High Alpha, calling for restraints. The shame of being locked in a cell while they debated whether to kill him or try to fix him. Decades of learning to control something that couldn't be controlled. Transformations that left him bleeding and broken. The gradual realization that he was becoming stronger but less stable. That every shift brought him closer to losing himself entirely. The day he became High Alpha, not through challenge, but through his father's suicide. The note left behind. Better to die human than live as a monster. Don't let it take you too. Fight it every day, or end it before you endanger the pack. Years of isolation. Of pushing everyone away because letting them close meant risking them seeing the beast. The loneliness so profound it became a physical ache. A hollow space that nothing could fill. Until 6 weeks ago, when a wolfless girl touched him, and commanded him to be still, and for the first time in centuries, the beast had obeyed something other than suppression. I gasped, tears streaming down my face. "Darius, don't speak yet. You have to see all of it." And I did. I saw him researching obsessively, hunting through forbidden archives for any mention of speakers, making deals with information brokers, spending fortunes to locate the one pack rumor said had a wolfless alpha heir, sending Thornwood to collect me not as a servant, but as his last desperate hope for salvation. I see you, I thought, pushing the feeling toward him through our connection. I see what you've survived, what you've sacrificed. You're not a monster, you're someone who's been fighting alone for so long you forgot what it feels like to have an ally. His grip on my hands tightened, and then I felt him entering my memories in turn. 18 years of watching everyone else transform while I stayed stubbornly human. The growing dread as each full moon passed without change. The way my father's love turned to disappointment, then pity, then nothing at all. My sister shifting early, everyone celebrating while I smiled through the jealousy and shame. Knowing I should be happy for her but only feeling the absence of my own wolf like a missing limb. The night of my 18th birthday. Standing naked in the moonlight while 200 pack members watched and waited. The crushing emptiness when nothing happened. The sound of people leaving, one by one, until even my family couldn't bear to stay. Months of being invisible, of taking up less space, speaking less, wanting less, because wanting anything felt like asking for something I didn't deserve. The morning my father told me about the council's tribute. The terrible relief underneath the fear, at least now I knew what I was worth. At least someone wanted me, even if only as property. Darius made a sound like he'd been gutted. Kiera, gods. I didn't know I knew you'd suffered, but I didn't understand. Now you do, I whispered. Now you know why I said yes to this. Because for the first time in my life, someone looked at me and saw possibility instead of lack. The light around us intensified, and I felt the binding taking hold, threads of power weaving between us, connecting consciousness to consciousness, soul to soul, and with it came understanding that transcended words. His true name, the one his soul knew itself by, Darius of the between spaces, neither fully human nor fully beast, forever caught in the liminal space that others feared to acknowledge. My true name, the one I'd never spoken aloud. Kiera who speaks to beasts, born to be bridge and bond, the voice that could reach what others couldn't touch. The names rose from somewhere deep inside us both, ancient and inevitable, and we spoke them simultaneously. I bind myself to Darius of the between spaces, to be his anchor when the beast rises, his voice when words fail, his witness in darkness and light. I bind myself to Kiera, who speaks to beasts, to be her shield when the world turns cruel, her strength when she falters, her home when she has nowhere else to belong. The words resonated through the circle, through the mountain, through our joined blood and synchronized breath, and then the binding snapped into place with force that drove us both to our knees. It felt like being unmade and remade simultaneously. Like every cell in my body was being rewritten with new code, new purpose. I screamed, or maybe Darius screamed, or maybe we both did as the magic completed its work. And then, suddenly, it was over. We knelt facing each other in the center of the circle, hands still clasped, blood drying on our palms. The light had faded. The wind had died. Even the moon seemed dimmer, its work complete, but everything was different. I could feel him. Not just emotionally, but physically, a second heartbeat in my chest that matched my own, a second consciousness hovering at the edge of my awareness. His presence wrapped around me like a second skin, protective and intimate, and absolutely undeniable. Kiera. My name on his lips sounded different, weighted, sacred. Can you feel everything? I breathed. I can feel your beast. It's not separate from you anymore, it's integrated, part of the whole instead of something locked away. He looked down at his hands, flexing them with wonder. You're right, the constant pressure, the feeling of something trying to claw out, it's gone. The beast is still there, still powerful, but it's peaceful, like it finally has permission to exist. Because I gave it that permission. When I spoke your true name, when I acknowledged you as the between spaces, I was accepting both halves of you, the human and the beast, together, and you. He reached up slowly and touched my face, his fingers gentle. Kiera, your eyes. They're different. I pulled my grandmother's locket up, using its polished surface as a makeshift mirror. My reflection stared back, and I gasped. My eyes were no longer fully human. They held the faintest trace of silver, not glowing like Darius's, but present, marking me as something other, something changed. The binding activated your wolf, Darius said, his voice filled with awe. Not fully, you can't shift yet, but it's there now, waking up, responding to the bond. Kiera, do you understand what this means? You're not just a speaker anymore. You're becoming something that hasn't existed since before the Forgotten War, a speaker-shifter hybrid. Both bloodlines active, working together instead of at war. I stared at my reflection, at the silver threading through eyes that had been plain brown my entire life. Is this what my grandmother was? Is that why she recognized what I could become? Possibly, if the bloodlines have been dormant in your family for generations, waiting for the right catalyst. He pulled me to my feet, his movements urgent. We need to get you inside. If anyone sees your eyes before we have a story prepared. But it was too late. Well, said a cold, familiar voice from the stairway entrance. This is interesting. We spun to find Beta Thornwood standing at the edge of the platform, his expression unreadable behind his wire-rimmed glasses. How long had he been watching? How much had he seen? Thornwood, Darius growled, moving to place himself between me and the Beta. You're trespassing in a restricted area. Am I? I was under the impression that council members had access to all Citadel facilities in cases of suspected treason. Thornwood stepped onto the platform, his movements measured and deliberate. And what I'm witnessing certainly appears treasonous. The High Alpha performing a forbidden binding ritual with a suspected speaker. Care to explain? There's nothing to explain. Miss Ashwood is developing a sympathetic bond with me. A rare but documented phenomenon among wolfless humans exposed to prolonged alpha presence. Is that so? Thornwood's gaze fixed on me, and I felt the weight of his scrutiny like a physical pressure. Then you won't mind if I test that theory? Miss Ashwood, please command me to kneel. The trap was obvious. If I refused, it would confirm I had speaker abilities I was hiding. If I complied and nothing happened, he'd know Darius was lying about the nature of our bond. And if I complied and succeeded, she can't command anyone, Darius said quickly. The bond only works between us, a result of prolonged exposure and compatible genetics. Then let her try anyway. If you're telling the truth, nothing will happen, and we can all go about our evening. Thornwood's smile was sharp. Dangerous. Unless, of course, you're afraid of what we might discover. I looked at Darius through our new bond, feeling his fear, his desperation, his certainty that this was the end. Thornwood had maneuvered us into a position where any choice would expose us, unless I could find a fourth option. You're right, I said, meeting Thornwood's ice-gray eyes directly. I should demonstrate what I'm capable of, to clear up any confusion about my nature. Kiera, no, Darius reached for me, but I stepped forward, out of his protective radius. I am Kiera who speaks to beasts, I said, layering power into my voice but directing it carefully, precisely. And I command you, Beta Thornwood, to tell the truth. What do you really want from this confrontation? The speaker command hit him like a physical blow. I watched him try to resist, watched his considerable will strain against the compulsion. But my power, amplified by the binding and the still active ritual circle, was too strong. I want. The words seemed torn from him. I want proof that speakers still exist. That the council's genocide failed. That there's still hope for. He cut himself off with visible effort, his face going pale. Hope for what? I pressed, feeling the shape of the secret he was hiding. For my daughter! The admission came out strangled. My daughter, who displays all the signs of speaker heritage but has been diagnosed as mentally ill rather than gifted. Who hears wolves' thoughts and goes mad from the chaos. Who the council wants to commit to an asylum where she'll be drugged into oblivion rather than trained. Silence fell across the platform. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. You have a speaker daughter, Darius said slowly, and you've been searching for another speaker who could help her. For 5 years. Thornwood's voice was raw, the cultured veneer stripped away by my command. 5 years of watching her suffer, of lying to the council, of searching desperately for any trace of speaker bloodlines that might have survived. When I heard rumors about Alpha Ashwood's Wolfless heir, I had to investigate. Had to see if the genetic markers aligned with old records. That's why you came personally to collect me, I said, understanding falling into place. Not to eliminate me, to recruit me. To beg you, if necessary. He looked at me with naked desperation. My daughter is 12 years old. She hears every wolf within 100 miles, all the time, with no way to filter or control it. The noise is driving her insane. But if someone could teach her to use her power properly, to turn the cacophony into something manageable. You want me to train her, I finished, to teach her what I'm only just learning myself. I want you to save her. The council meets in 3 weeks to finalize her commitment. After that, she'll be beyond reach, drugged so heavily she won't know her own name. Please. The proud, feared Beta Thornwood dropped to his knees not from my command, but from desperate choice. I'll do anything. I'll protect you from the council, help you hide what you are, provide resources, information, whatever you need. Just help my daughter. I looked at Darius through our bond, feeling his shock, his calculation, his protective instincts warring with pragmatic recognition that we'd just gained a powerful ally. What do you think? I pushed the thought toward him through our connection, and felt his surprise that it worked. I think, he responded the same way, that you just turned our greatest threat into our greatest asset. Well done, speaker mine. The possessive endearment sent warmth through my chest. I turned back to Thornwood, who still knelt on the cold stone, waiting for judgment. I'll help your daughter, I said. On 3 conditions. First, you tell no one about what I am, not the council, not your allies, no one. As far as anyone knows, I'm just a wolfless human who developed a sympathetic bond with the High Alpha. Agreed. Second, you provide us with everything you've learned about speakers. All your research, your sources, any other potential bloodlines you've discovered. If there are more like your daughter out there, we need to find them before the council does. Done. Third, I paused, making sure he understood the weight of what I was asking. You swear loyalty to me. Not to the High Alpha. Not to the council. To me. Personally. Because I'm going to build something new. Something the council won't like. And I need people I can trust absolutely. Thornwood lifted his head, and in his ice-gray eyes, I saw tears. You're going to create a sanctuary for speakers. Train them, protect them, rebuild what the council destroyed. Eventually. First, I need to survive the next 3 weeks. Then I need to learn enough to actually help your daughter. But yes, that's the ultimate goal, to make sure no one else suffers for being born different. Then I swear it. He placed his fist over his heart in the ancient gesture of fealty. I, Beta Thornwood of the Council of 5, pledge my loyalty to Kiera who speaks to beasts. My skills, my resources, my life all are yours to command. The oath resonated through the ritual circle, binding in a different way than my connection with Darius. Not soul deep, but still powerful. Still unbreakable without severe consequences. Rise, I said, and he did. His expression shifted from desperation to something like hope. Thank you, he breathed. You have no idea what this means. I do, actually, because 6 weeks ago, I was your daughter. Suffering from something I didn't understand, with no one to help me, everyone looking at me like I was broken. I met his gaze steadily. That's why I'll help her. Not for your loyalty, though I'll accept it, but because I remember what it feels like to be lost and alone and different. And if I can spare her even 1 day of that pain, it's worth the risk. Darius stepped up beside me, his hand finding mine, our bond humming with shared purpose. We need to move quickly. If the council suspects anything before we're ready, I'll misdirect them, Thornwood said. Create false trails, redirect suspicions, buy you time. But you need to be careful. The other council members aren't as personally motivated as I am. If they discover what you're building, they'll move to destroy it. Let them try, I said, and felt the silver in my eyes flare brighter. I'm done being afraid of people who think difference equals danger. It's time for something new, something better. A revolution, Thornwood said softly. An evolution, I corrected. We're not destroying the old system. We're creating space for something that should have existed all along, a place where speakers and shifters work together, like we were meant to, before the council decided coexistence was impossible. The moon had begun to set, dawn approaching rapidly. We needed to get inside before someone else discovered us. But as I walked back toward the stairwell, flanked by Darius on one side and Thornwood on the other, I felt something shift in my chest. The hollow space where my wolf had slept for 18 years was no longer empty. Something stirred there, awakening slowly, responding to the power I'd claimed and the purpose I'd found. Not fully present yet, but coming. And when she finally emerged, when the speaker and the wolf finally unified into something new, the whole world was going to feel it, just like my grandmother had promised. Chapter 7. The Price of Secrets. The year that followed the binding ritual was both the hardest and the most purposeful of my life. Thornwood made good on his promises. Within days of our arrangement, he'd redirected the council's attention away from me by manufacturing a crisis in the Eastern Territory's rogue attacks that required immediate investigation. While the other council members focused on that threat, Darius and I worked in secret. Training became my entire existence, not just learning to control my speaker abilities, but understanding them. Thornwood smuggled in fragments of pre-purged texts, charred scrolls rescued from burning libraries, oral histories recorded by historians who'd hidden them in code. I spent daylight hours translating, studying, piecing together the lost history of my people. Speakers hadn't been tyrants, as the official histories claimed. They'd been mediators, bridges between human settlements and wolf packs, able to communicate with both, to negotiate peace, to prevent the kind of territorial violence that had nearly destroyed both species. The Forgotten War hadn't been about speakers enslaving shifters. It had been about shifters breaking free from dependence on speakers, attempting to establish autonomy without understanding the cost. The moon goddess didn't create shifters to protect humans from darkness. I read aloud one afternoon, translating from an ancient dialect. She created them to protect humans from speakers who'd grown drunk on power. But in doing so, she overcorrected. She severed the natural bond between the species, and created a world where neither could fully thrive without the other. Darius looked up from his own research anatomical texts about direwolf transformation that he'd been studying obsessively. That explains why my beast settled after our binding. It wasn't just about accepting both halves of myself. It was about reconnecting to the purpose. Direwolves were meant to serve as partners, to speakers, not as independent entities. So you're saying you were always supposed to be this way? That you're not a curse, but an incomplete evolution? Something like that. He moved to sit beside me, our bond thrumming with comfortable familiarity. Over the months, we'd grown accustomed to each other's presence in ways that transcended physical proximity. I could feel his moods, sense his thoughts, knew when he was troubled even from across the citadel, and he could read me just as easily. The first direwolves were speaker bonded. When the bonds were severed, we became lost. Too powerful to control without an anchor. Too unstable to integrate into normal pack structures. Most went feral and had to be destroyed. The few who survived learned to suppress the beast entirely, passing down genetic trauma disguised as noble self-control. That's horrific. That's history, written by the victors who decided speakers were too dangerous to exist. He traced the silver threading through my irises. It had grown more pronounced over the months, especially when I used my power. But you're changing that. Rewriting what's possible. I wanted to believe him. But believing meant confronting the massive responsibility I'd taken on. Thornwood's daughter, Sarah, had arrived 2 months after the binding. She'd been everything her father described 12 years old, skeletal from refusing food, her eyes haunted by sounds only she could hear. The first time I met her, she'd screamed at the sight of me. "Too loud!" She'd shrieked, hands clamped over her ears. "You're all too loud. Make it stop. Please make it stop." It had taken 3 hours of patient work to help her understand that what she was hearing wasn't madness. It was wolf speech, the primal communication that existed beneath language, and she was fluent in it without any training or filters. Teaching her control had been the hardest thing I'd ever attempted. Every lesson was a battle. Her power was stronger than mine, wild and untrained, capable of commanding entire packs simultaneously but with no precision. She'd accidentally forced 100 wolves to howl in unison during one session, alerting half the citadel to her presence. We'd covered it up as a training exercise gone wrong, but it had been close, too close. Now, 4 months into her training, Sarah could finally sleep without sedatives, could eat meals without being overwhelmed by the pack's feeding frenzy instincts bleeding into her consciousness, could exist in the citadel without wanting to claw her own skin off. She still had a long way to go, but she was improving. "How is she today?" Darius asked, sensing the direction of my thoughts. "Better." She managed to command a single wolf without affecting the others nearby. "That's huge progress." I rubbed my temples, feeling the headache that always came after extended speaker work. "But she's still not ready for the council's inspection. They'll see right through any attempt to pass her off as mentally ill. Then we don't let them inspect her. Thornwood can claim she's too unstable for visitors. Buy us more time." "How much time do we have, really?" I met his silver eyes, seeing my own worry reflected there. "The other council members are getting suspicious. The Eastern Territory crisis is resolved, and they're starting to ask questions about why you spend so much time in the restricted wing, about why you're calmer, more stable, but also more protective of your privacy. Let them ask. They can't enter my personal quarters without formal challenge, and none of them are stupid enough to challenge me directly. Not yet, but eventually." A knock at the door interrupted us. Luna entered, her expression troubled. "Hi Alpha, there's a situation. Dr. Reeves is requesting an immediate meeting. She says it's urgent." Darius and I exchanged glances. Dr. Reeves had been persistently requesting follow-up examinations, claiming she needed to monitor my unique physiology. We'd been deflecting for months, but apparently her patience had run out. "Tell her I'm busy," Darius said. "I did, sir." She said if you don't meet with her within the hour, she'll bring her concerns to the full council. Something about anomalous readings in the restricted wing's air filtration system. My blood went cold. The restricted wing's ventilation had to filter out the massive amounts of energy Sarah and I generated during training sessions. If Dr. Reeves had noticed unusual readings, "We'll meet with her," I said before Darius could refuse. "In the medical wing." 1 hour. Luna nodded and retreated, leaving us alone with our growing dread. "This is bad," Darius said. "If she's detected energy signatures that match speaker activity, then we give her a partial truth. Tell her about my developing bond with you, about how it's activated, dormant, genetic sequences. Make it sound like a fascinating medical anomaly she can study without revealing what I actually am. She won't believe that. She's too smart. Then we give her a reason to keep quiet. Everyone has secrets, Darius. We just need to figure out what hers is, and use it." He looked at me with something like pride. "You've learned to think like a politician. I've learned to think like a survivor. There's a difference." Dr. Reeves's office was exactly as I remembered: sterile white tile, intimidating medical equipment, the smell of antiseptic and ambition. She sat behind her desk, a tablet in hand, her expression coldly professional. "Hi Alpha, Miss Ashwood. Thank you for making time." She gestured to the chairs across from her, but neither of us sat. A power play. She wanted us comfortable and compliant. We remained standing, forcing her to look up. "You said this was urgent," Darius said. "Explain." "Gladly. Over the past several months, I've been monitoring various biological markers throughout the Citadel. Air quality, energy readings, genetic material shed by residents. Standard procedure for a facility this size." She tapped her tablet, and a holographic display appeared. "But I've noticed some unusual patterns. Specifically, energy signatures in the restricted wing that don't match any known shifter profile." The hologram showed waves of color, mostly standard shifter frequencies in gold and amber, but scattered throughout were pulses of silver. "My color. Speaker frequency. What am I looking at?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "That's what I'd like to know." "These silver readings appeared approximately 6 months ago, shortly after you arrived, Miss Ashwood. They spike during evening hours, which corresponds to when you and the High Alpha conduct your training sessions." She fixed me with those shark black eyes. "I have a theory. Would you like to hear it?" "By all means," Darius said, his voice dangerously soft. "I believe Miss Ashwood is not entirely wolfless. I believe she carries a dormant genetic sequence that has been activated through prolonged exposure to the high alpha's unique direwolf frequency. This activation has triggered the development of abilities that resemble historical accounts of speaker powers, specifically, the capacity to influence shifter consciousness through verbal commands." The silence that followed was suffocating. She knew. Maybe not all of it, but enough. "That's quite a theory," I said carefully. "Do you have proof?" "I have data, energy signatures, blood work from your initial examination showing genetic anomalies I couldn't explain at the time, observational reports from staff who've noticed subtle changes in your appearance and behavior." She leaned forward. "I also have Thornwood's requisition records showing he's been accessing restricted historical archives. Documents about pre-purge speaker culture. Care to explain why the Council's most loyal beta is suddenly interested in extinct bloodlines?" "Personal research," Darius said. "For 5 months? Pulling files that haven't been accessed in decades? I may not be a politician, High Alpha, but I'm not an idiot." She stood, circling around the desk to face us directly. "You're hiding something. Something significant. And I deserve to know what it is." "Why?" I asked. "So you can report it to the Council? Turn me over to be executed? So I can help you, you stupid girl." The outburst was so unexpected that both Darius and I recoiled. Dr. Reeves took a breath, visibly composing herself. When she spoke again, her voice was tight with controlled emotion. "Do you have any idea how frustrating it is to spend decades researching genetic anomalies, only to have the Council destroy every promising avenue of inquiry because it might lead to dangerous knowledge? I've watched them burn research, execute subjects, suppress discoveries that could have advanced our understanding of shifter biology by centuries, all because they're terrified of anything they can't control." She moved to a locked cabinet and input a code. The door swung open, revealing files stacked floor to ceiling, all forbidden, all hidden. "I've been collecting suppressed research for 20 years, documenting the Council's crimes against scientific progress, and 6 months ago, the most interesting genetic specimen in a century walks into my lab, and I'm supposed to just ignore it?" She pulled out a file and threw it on the desk. "This is my daughter, was my daughter. She developed the ability to sense emotional states in wolves, not quite speaker level, but close. The Council had her executed when she was 16, called it mercy because she was defective." I picked up the file, seeing a young woman's face staring back at me. Dr. Reeves's eyes, but softer, kinder. The notation at the bottom read, "Eliminated. Genetic aberration. Threat level moderate." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "I don't want your sympathy. I want your cooperation. If you are what I think you are, if you're a functional speaker with active abilities, then you're proof that the genetic sequence can be reactivated, that the Council's genocide failed, that there's hope for others like my daughter who might be born with these gifts." "And what would you do with that proof?" Darius asked. "Study it. Document it. Create a protocol for identifying and training potential speakers before they're discovered and killed by the Council." She looked at me with naked hunger, not for power, but for knowledge, for vindication. "Help me understand how you work, Miss Ashwood. Let me run tests, analyze your abilities, create a framework for helping others like you. In exchange, I'll keep your secret. I'll misdirect the Council, falsify reports, do whatever is necessary to protect you." It was the same bargain Thornwood had offered, but with a different currency. Not protection for his daughter, but knowledge for her daughter's memory. I looked at Darius through our bond. "What do you think?" "I think we don't have a choice. She already knows too much. Better to have her working with us than against us. Can we trust her? Can we afford not to?" I turned back to Dr. Reeves. "I'll let you study me, but on my terms. No invasive procedures without my explicit consent. No sharing data with anyone outside our circle. And you answer to me, not the Council. Agreed?" "More than agreed." "Thank you." She visibly relaxed. "When can we start?" "After the Council's next meeting. Right now, we have a more immediate problem. Thornwood's daughter. She's developing speaker abilities, and the Council wants to commit her. We need medical documentation that supports a diagnosis of temporary mental instability that's now resolving, rather than permanent genetic aberration. Dr. Reeves's expression sharpened. Thornwood has a speaker daughter? And he's been hiding her? He brought her to me for training. She's made remarkable progress, but she's not ready for council scrutiny. Then, we create a cover story. A temporary neurological disorder triggered by early puberty, now successfully treated with a combination of medication and therapy. I can fabricate the necessary records, backdate them to establish a treatment history. She was already pulling up files, her fingers flying across her tablet. When is the inspection? 3 weeks. That's tight, but manageable. I'll need to examine her, establish baseline readings that support the cover story. Can you bring her here without alerting the council? We'll find a way, Darius said. But Dr. Reeves understands that if you betray us, if you reveal what Kiera is to anyone, you'll kill me. Yes, I understand. Fortunately, I have no intention of being killed. I've spent 2 decades hiding my research from the council. I'm quite good at discretion. She looked between us, and for the first time, I saw something like respect in her eyes. You're building something, aren't you? Not just hiding. Creating infrastructure for speaker training and protection. Possibly, I admitted. Is that a problem? On the contrary, it's the first intelligent plan I've heard in years. She extended her hand. Count me in. For my daughter's memory, and for every child who might be born different and deserves a chance to survive anyway. I took her hand, feeling the weight of another alliance forged in desperation and hope. We were building a conspiracy, Thornwood, Dr. Reeves, Darius, myself against the most powerful governing body in the territories. It was insane. It was necessary. And we were running out of time. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Sarah submitted to Dr. Reeves's examinations with surprising compliance, recognizing an adult who finally understood what she was experiencing. The fabricated medical records were masterpieces of deception, detailed enough to be convincing, but vague enough to avoid future complications. Thornwood coached his daughter on how to behave during the inspection. Be quiet, subdued. Let them see a traumatized child recovering from illness, not a powerful speaker in training. But I'm not traumatized anymore, Sarah protested. Kiera helped me. I'm better now. I know, sweetheart. But the council can't know that. They need to believe you were sick, and are now healing naturally, not developing abilities that terrify them. Can you pretend for me? Just for 1 day? She'd agreed, though I could feel her frustration through my connection to her. Training another speaker had created a bond between us not as deep as what I shared with Darius, but present. I could sense her emotional states, feel when she was struggling with control. The night before the council inspection, I couldn't sleep. Darius found me standing at the window of our chambers. They were ours now, truly shared. As the binding had made separate quarters feel wrong, we gravitated toward each other constantly, seeking proximity without understanding why. You're spiraling, he said softly, wrapping his arms around me from behind. I can feel it. We've built so much in such a short time. If we fail tomorrow, if they discover what Sarah is, what I am, then we fight. But Kiera, we won't fail. You've trained Sarah well. Dr. Reeves's cover story is solid. Thornwood will redirect any suspicious questions. We've prepared for every contingency, except the one we can't predict. The random variable that destroys everything. He turned me to face him, his silver eyes serious. Do you know what I've learned from having you in my head for 6 months? You're catastrophically brave. You see disaster coming and walk toward it anyway, because the alternative is giving up, and giving up isn't in your nature. That's what's going to save us tomorrow. Not perfect planning, raw, stubborn courage. I leaned into him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. When this is over, when we've survived the inspection, I want to find more speakers. Build the sanctuary for real, not just as a distant goal. We will, I promise. But first survive tomorrow. Together? Always together. That's what the binding means. Whatever comes, we face it as one. I kissed him, then something we'd been building toward for months but hadn't quite acknowledged. The physical intimacy had always been there, layered beneath the mental and emotional connection. but we'd been too focused on survival to explore it. But tonight, with everything we'd built hanging in the balance, I needed to feel alive, connected, certain of at least this one thing. He responded with carefully controlled passion, his beast rising close to the surface, drawn by emotion and proximity. I felt it through our bond, the wild surge of instinct that wanted to claim and protect and possess, but also the human tenderness that loved me for my mind as much as anything physical. Tomorrow, I whispered against his lips. After we survive tomorrow, we have this conversation properly. It's a date, he murmured, and pulled me closer. We stayed like that, wrapped in each other, until dawn broke over the mountains and brought with it the council's arrival. Judgment Day had come, and I was as ready as I'd ever be. The inspection took place in a neutral meeting room, not the council chamber, but not private either. All 5 council members attended, including Darius, who had to maintain his official role despite our personal connection. Sarah sat beside her father, small and fragile-looking in a simple gray dress. She'd been coached to avoid eye contact, to speak only when directly addressed, to present as a traumatized child rather than the powerful speaker she was becoming. I watched from the gallery, officially present as Darius's assistant, actually ready to intervene if anything went wrong. The female council member, I'd learned her name was Alpha Morgana, spoke first. Beta Thornwood, we're here to evaluate your daughter's condition and determine if she's fit for public integration or requires permanent institutional care. Dr. Reeves, please present your findings. Dr. Reeves stood, tablet in hand, her expression professionally neutral. Sarah Thornwood, age 12, presented 6 months ago with acute auditory hallucinations, paranoid delusions, and violent outbursts. Preliminary assessment suggested permanent neurological damage. However, subsequent treatment with a combination of psychotropic medication and cognitive behavioral therapy has shown remarkable improvement. She displayed charts, graphs, fabricated data that told a story of illness and recovery. It was brilliant, detailed enough to withstand scrutiny, but boring enough that no one would look too closely. Current status? Asked the huge male alpha cron. I'd learned. Stable. Hallucinations have decreased by 80%. Violent episodes have ceased entirely. She demonstrates age-appropriate cognitive function and emotional regulation. I recommend continued outpatient treatment with monthly check-ins, but see no medical reason for institutionalization. Can she shift? This from the nervous male Alpha Cyrus. Thornwood answered. She had her first shift last month. Controlled, successful. Her wolf is small, appropriate for an Omega designation, but present and healthy. It was a lie. Sarah couldn't shift her speaker bloodline, like mine. Had suppressed her wolf. But producing a substitute shifter for the first shift demonstration had been easy enough. The council wouldn't verify, unless they had reason to doubt. I'd like to question her directly, Morgana said, fixing her calculating gaze on Sarah. Child, do you still hear voices? Sarah shook her head, playing her role perfectly. Look at me when I address you. Slowly, reluctantly, Sarah lifted her eyes. I held my breath, knowing that the silver threading through her irises was visible if you knew what to look for. But Morgana wasn't looking for speaker markers. She was looking for shifter instability. Tell me what you hear right now. In this room. Nothing, ma'am. Just people talking. Sarah's voice was small, childlike. No other sounds? No strange whispers or commands? No, ma'am. And you feel no compulsion to obey these non-existent voices? I feel... Sarah hesitated, and I felt her fear spike through our connection. She was about to break character, about to reveal too much. Before I could intervene, Darius spoke. She feels frightened, as any child would when questioned by 5 of the most powerful shifters alive. Perhaps we could make this less intimidating? It was a calculated risk. High alphas didn't typically advocate for children, especially those under investigation. But it worked. Morgana nodded, her expression softening slightly. Of course. Sarah, I apologize if we're scaring you. We simply want to make sure you're healthy and safe. Do you feel safe with your father? Yes, ma'am, very safe. And you understand that if the voices return, if you start feeling confused or frightened, You need to tell an adult immediately? Yes, ma'am. Good. Morgana looked at the other council members. I move that we accept Dr. Reeves's assessment and release Sarah Thornwood to her father's care with mandatory monthly medical check-ins. Any objections? The others voted in agreement, though Kron looked disappointed. He'd probably been hoping for something dramatic, some excuse to exercise authority. Motion passes. Beta Thornwood, you're dismissed. Please keep us informed of your daughter's progress. Thornwood stood, guiding Sarah from the room with a hand on her shoulder. As they passed my position in the gallery, I caught Sarah's eye and felt her relief through our bond. You did perfectly, I projected toward her. So brave. Her tiny smile was all the acknowledgement I needed. But then, as they reached the door, Sarah stumbled, caught herself, and in that moment of imbalance, her control slipped. Every wolf in the room felt it. A pulse of speaker command that said, "Protect," radiating from her small form. It lasted less than a second, but it was there, undeniable, and 3 wolves immediately moved toward her in response before catching themselves. The room went silent. Morgana's eyes narrowed. What was that? What was what? Thornwood asked, but his voice was too careful. That pulse of power. It felt like... She stopped herself, but the damage was done. Suspicion had been planted. Kron stood, his massive frame intimidating. The child is not what she appears. I move that we extend the inspection, run additional tests. Denied, Darius said, his voice carrying absolute authority. The council has voted. The matter is closed. High Alpha, with respect, if there's even a possibility. There is no possibility. What you felt was residual distress from a traumatized child. Emotional bleed over from a young shifter still learning control. It happens. Frequently. He stood, and the pressure in the room intensified. Unless you're suggesting we interrogate every young wolf who experiences emotional instability, in which case, I'll expect all your children, grandchildren, and young pack members to submit to similar scrutiny. The threat was clear. If they pushed this, Darius would turn it into a political disaster that affected everyone. Kron backed down. But his expression promised that this wasn't over. The council dismissed, filing out with various levels of satisfaction and suspicion. Thornwood rushed Sarah away before anyone could corner them with follow-up questions. And I sat in the gallery, my heart pounding, knowing we'd just barely survived, but also knowing that our time was running out. The council was watching now, suspicious, searching for proof, and eventually, they would find it. If you're holding your breath right now, if your heart is racing because you know everything Kiera has built is about to crumble, hit subscribe, because she needs you in her corner when the truth comes out. She needs people who won't abandon her when the world turns against her. Again, comment if you know what it's like to hide who you really are just to survive. Don't let her face Chapter 8 alone. Chapter 8, The Revelation. The attack came 3 days after the inspection. I was in the restricted wing with Sarah, working on fine-tuning her control, when the explosion rocked the citadel. The mountain itself seemed to shudder, and chunks of stone rained from the ceiling. I threw myself over Sarah instinctively, shielding her with my body as the world turned to chaos and dust. What was that? She screamed, her voice barely audible over the alarm klaxons that had started wailing. I don't know. Stay behind me. I pulled her to her feet, coughing through the dust cloud. Through my bond with Darius, I felt his instant response rage mixed with battle readiness, his beast rising to the surface with predatory eagerness. Where are you? His thought came sharp and urgent. Restricted wing, with Sarah. What's happening? Under attack. Multiple entry points. Get to the panic room, now. Don't come out until I come for you. Darius. Now. Kiera. The command wasn't alpha dominance, it was fear. He was terrified for me, and that fear was more compelling than any order could be. I grabbed Sarah's hand and ran, navigating the dust-choked corridors by memory and instinct. Behind us, I could hear sounds of combat snarls, screams, the meaty impact of bodies colliding. The citadel was under siege, but by whom? We'd just reached the panic room when a figure stepped out of the shadows, blocking our path. Alpha Kron, in his massive wolf form, stood between us and safety. His gold eyes glowed with malicious triumph, and his lips pulled back to reveal teeth designed for tearing flesh. Going somewhere? The words came out mangled by his shifted vocal cords, but understandable. The High Alpha said you were in the restricted wing. How convenient that you're exactly where I need you to be. This was you. The realization hit like ice water. You orchestrated this attack. I orchestrated a reckoning. The High Alpha has been hiding something. Everyone can see it. His sudden stability, his protection of a wolfless human, his beta's obsession with forbidden knowledge. Kron advanced slowly, savoring our fear. I suspected. But today, I'm going to prove it. Because when you're threatened, when that child is threatened, you're going to show us all what you really are. He lunged at Sarah. I moved without thinking, putting myself between his massive jaws and the terrified 12-year-old behind me. Speaker power erupted from my throat in a command that shook the walls. Stop! Kron froze mid-leap, his body locked in place by my will. But I could feel him fighting it, his alpha strength pushing against my command with brutal force. He was stronger than any wolf I'd ever tried to control. I'd have seconds before he broke free. Run! I shoved Sarah toward the panic room. Code 1847. Lock yourself in. Don't open it for anyone but Darius. I can help. Run! She ran, and I turned my full attention to Kron, layering command after command to keep him contained. Be still. Be calm. Be human. Each word drained me, my power burning through my reserves like wildfire. But slowly, agonizingly, his massive form began to shrink, bones cracking as my will forced him back to human shape. He fought every inch of the transformation, and when he finally stood before me as a man, naked, furious, trembling with rage, his first words were a victorious snarl. There it is, proof. You're a speaker. I'm nothing. I gasped, exhausted. Just a girl trying to protect a child. You just commanded an alpha against his will. Forced a transformation. That's not nothing, that's exactly what the ancient texts describe. He took a step forward despite my attempts to hold him, his willpower monstrous. The council needs to see this. Needs to understand what the High Alpha has been hiding. He threw his head back and howled a sound that echoed through the entire citadel, a call to the other council members that demanded attention. I felt them respond, felt Morgana and Cyrus converging on our location, drawn by Kron's summons. In seconds, they'd see me standing over an alpha I'd obviously just commanded, and there would be no more hiding. Unless I ran, I bolted, leaving Kron behind, racing through corridors I knew better than anyone after months of nightly training sessions. Behind me, I heard him shift again, heard the thunder of paws against stone as he gave chase. Darius, Kron knows. He's exposed me. The others are coming. Where are you? East Corridor, Level 3, heading for. I rounded a corner and skidded to a stop. The corridor ahead was blocked, not by debris, but by wolves. Dozens of them, surrounding a central figure I recognized instantly. Beta Thornwood, bleeding from multiple wounds, his clothes torn, his expression desperate. And behind him, protected by his body, was Luna, my servant. The young Omega who'd brought me breakfast every morning for 6 months, who'd helped me prepare for the council meeting, who'd become something like a friend despite the barriers between us. Luna was holding something, a bundle wrapped in cloth. And even from a distance, I could smell it. Speaker artifacts. The forbidden texts Thornwood had been collecting, the ones that would prove what we'd been doing. Miss Ashwood, Thornwood called when he saw me. They know. Someone sold us out. The attackers went straight for my quarters, straight for the archives. We have to destroy the evidence before. A massive gray wolf broke through Thornwood's defense, jaws closing around Luna's arm. She screamed, and the bundle fell, scattering precious documents across the blood-stained floor. I felt something inside me snap, not break, transform. That hollow space where my wolf had slept for 18 years suddenly exploded with power. Not a wolf, not exactly. Something older, vaster. The speaker and the beast finally, fully unifying into something that had never existed before. My voice, when it emerged, wasn't mine anymore. It was layered with frequencies that bypassed consciousness and spoke directly to the primal core of every shifter in range. Enough. The word detonated, like a bomb made of pure will. Every wolf in the corridor, attacking and defending, both froze instantly. Not just frozen in place, but frozen in consciousness, their minds locked in stasis by a command so powerful it overrode even their autonomic functions. Silence fell like a curtain. I walked forward through the maze of paralyzed wolves, and I felt the change in myself. My eyes blazed pure silver now, not just threaded with it. My skin seemed to glow with internal light, and when I spoke, reality itself bent to accommodate my words. Release her. The gray wolf's jaws opened mechanically, dropping Luna's mangled arm. She collapsed, gasping, bleeding badly but alive. Thornwood, get her to Dr. Reeves. Take the artifacts, hide them. He stared at me with something like religious awe. What are you? I don't know yet, but I'm about to find out. Go. Now. He grabbed Luna and the scattered documents, fleeing toward the medical wing. I turned to face the paralyzed wolves, feeling the weight of what I'd just done settling over me like a mantle. I'd revealed myself completely. Every wolf here would remember this, would report it to their alphas. There was no more hiding, no more pretending to be just a wolfless curiosity. The secret was out. Behind me, I heard footsteps, multiple people, running. I turned to see Darius burst around the corner, partially shifted, his beast riding close to the surface. Morgana and Cyrus flanked him, and bringing up the rear was Kron, still naked, still furious. They all stopped dead when they saw the scene. Kiera, Darius breathed, and I felt his shock through our bond. Your eyes, you're fully manifested. What is this? Morgana demanded, staring at the frozen wolves. What did she do? She commanded them. Kron said triumphantly. Just like she commanded me. She's a speaker. The High Alpha has been hiding a speaker in the Citadel for 6 months, training her, building power. Building a rebellion, Cyrus finished, his nervous energy crystallizing into certainty. That's what this is. The attacks, the breach, it's not from outside. It's from inside. She's been turning our own people against us. That's not true, I said, but my voice still carried that layered power, and all 3 council members flinched. I've been learning to control abilities I didn't ask for and never wanted. The attack was orchestrated by Kron to expose me, to force this confrontation. Lies, Kron snarled. I had nothing to do with. You knew exactly where to find me. Knew I'd be in the restricted wing at this exact time. Knew I'd react to protect Sarah. You set this up. Prove it. I don't have to. You're going to tell them yourself. I let the speaker power rise fully, stopped fighting the transformation that had been building for months. Alpha Kron, I command you. Speak the truth about your involvement in today's attack. He fought. Gods. How he fought. His will was tremendous. His alpha authority pushing back against my command with everything he had. But I was fully manifested now, powered by the binding with Darius, amplified by my grandmother's locket, channeling something ancient and absolute. The words tore from his throat against his will. I hired mercenaries to breach the Citadel. I gave them the security codes. I directed them to the restricted wing and Thornwood's quarters. I did this to force the speaker to reveal herself and prove the High Alpha was harboring forbidden bloodlines. Morgana's expression shifted from suspicion to cold fury. You violated Citadel security. Endangered everyone here. For what political advantage? For the safety of our kind, Kron roared, breaking free of my command through sheer rage. Speakers enslaved us for centuries. They controlled our minds, made us puppets, stripped away our free will. The High Alpha should have killed her the moment he discovered what she was. Instead, he bound himself to her, made himself vulnerable to having an ally instead of an enemy. Darius interrupted, his voice carrying deadly calm. Yes, Kron. I discovered Kiera was a speaker, and rather than executing an 18-year-old girl for the crime of her genetics, I chose to see what she could become with training and support. I chose to believe that speakers and shifters could coexist, as we were meant to before fear and prejudice tore us apart. That's treason. That's evolution. We've been suppressing speaker bloodlines for 500 years, and what has it gained us? A world where different is synonymous with dangerous, where anyone born outside narrow parameters is eliminated. We're not protecting ourselves, we're limiting our own potential. Beautiful speech, Cyrus said, his fingers tapping that nervous rhythm. But it doesn't change what she is, what she represents. The council has standing orders. The council, I said, letting power ring in every word, is about to change its orders, because I'm not alone. There are others like me, children born with these abilities, who've been diagnosed as ill, imprisoned, executed, and I'm going to find them, protect them, train them. You can either help me, or I'll do it without you. But you will not stop me. You think you can threaten the council? Morgana's voice was ice. One manifested speaker against centuries of established power? Not just her, said a voice from the corridor entrance. Thornwood stepped into view, bleeding but unbowed. Me too. I stand with the speaker. And me. Dr. Reeves emerged from another passage, Luna supported in her arms, already being treated. I'll document everything she can do, create protocols for training others, provide medical support. This is insanity, Cyrus breathed. You're all committing suicide. We're committing to something better, I said. A world where power doesn't have to come from fear. Where different doesn't mean disposable. Where an explosion, bigger than the first, rocked the citadel. The floor beneath us cracked, and through the widening fissure, I could see fire. The main support columns, Darius said, his face going white. If they fail, this entire section will collapse. The mercenaries, Kron said. They were supposed to stop after exposing her. Unless someone paid them to do more than expose, Morgana finished grimly. Someone who wanted the citadel destabilized entirely. Kron, what have you done? I didn't, I only hired them to breach security, not to. Another explosion. Closer. The mountain groaned around us. We need to evacuate. Cyrus said. Get everyone out before. There's no time, Dr. Reeves interrupted. 3,000 residents, one exit route, and maybe 10 minutes before structural collapse. We'll lose hundreds. Everyone looked at me. What? I asked, feeling their expectation like a physical weight. You commanded every wolf in that corridor at once, Darius said. Can you do it again? Broader? Can you command every shifter in the citadel? I don't know. I've never tried anything on that scale. Try now. Because if you can't, we're all about to die. The mountain groaned again, and cracks spider-webbed across the walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. Time was running out. I reached for that well of power inside me, the place where speaker met wolf, where my will could bend reality, and I pushed outward, letting my consciousness expand through the citadel like ripples across water. I felt them every shifter, every wolf. 3,000 individual minds suddenly connected to mine. The weight of them threatened to crush me, their fear and panic bleeding into my consciousness until I couldn't tell where I ended and they began. Too much, I thought desperately. I can't hold this many. You're not alone. Darius's presence surged through our bond, his strength bolstering mine. I'm here. Use me as an anchor. And me. Thornwood's loyalty, sworn months ago, provided structure to my chaos. And me. Dr. Reeves's clinical precision helped me separate individual threads from the overwhelming mass. And me. Sarah, brave little Sarah, added her nascent speaker power to mine. Together, we were enough. I opened my mouth and spoke to every soul in the citadel simultaneously. Be calm. Listen. Trust. When I tell you to move, you will move orderly, quickly, safely. You will help the weak, protect the young, ensure no one is left behind. You are pack, you are family, you are survivors. Now move. 3,000 wolves responded as one. Through the cracked walls and shattered windows, through corridors collapsing around them, they flowed like water finding its course. The strong carried the weak. The fast waited for the slow. No panic, no chaos. Just coordinated evacuation driven by a will greater than any individual's. I held the command for what felt like hours but was probably less than 10 minutes. Held it through tremors that knocked me to my knees. Through pain that felt like my skull was splitting open. Through exhaustion that made every breath a battle. And then, Finally, Darius's voice in my mind. Everyone's out. You can let go. I released the command and collapsed. The last thing I remembered was the mountain giving one final groan. And then everything went dark. I woke to sunlight and the smell of pine. Not the citadel then. Somewhere else. Somewhere safe. I opened my eyes slowly, squinting against the brightness, and found myself in a tent, military grade, spacious, clearly meant for field operations. Through the open flap, I could see an encampment stretching across a mountain meadow. Hundreds of tents, cooking fires, shifters moving with purpose. She's awake, Luna's voice, coming from somewhere to my right. Footsteps. And then Darius was there, kneeling beside the cot I'd been laid on. His face was haggard, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. But when he looked at me, relief flooded our bond. "Welcome back," he said softly. "You've been unconscious for 2 days. 2 days? What happened to the citadel?" "Gone. The explosions brought down the main support structure. The entire complex collapsed into the mountain about an hour after the evacuation." His hand found mine, gripping tight. "But everyone survived. All 3,000 residents made it out safely because of you. Because you held them together when everything was falling apart. Kron? Dead. Killed by his own mercenaries when he tried to stop them from completing their secondary objective, which, as it turns out, was full destruction of the citadel and assassination of the council. Someone wanted us eliminated entirely. Who? We don't know yet. But we will find out." He helped me sit up, supporting my back. "Kiera. The council is changed. Kron's betrayal, the attack. Seeing what you did, it shifted something. Morgana and Cyrus are willing to negotiate, to consider a new arrangement where speakers are protected rather than hunted. And in exchange, you help us rebuild. Not just the citadel, but our entire society. Create balance between speakers and shifters the way it was always meant to be." I looked out at the encampment, at shifters of every rank working together to build temporary shelters, to cook communal meals, to care for the young and elderly. The hierarchy still existed, but softened, made flexible by shared trauma and survival. "This is going to be complicated," I said. "Catastrophically complicated," he agreed, "but also necessary, and possible, because of you." Sarah poked her head into the tent, her young face bright with relief. "You're awake. Dr. Reeves said you might sleep for weeks, but I knew you were stronger than that." Behind her, Thornwood appeared, and then Dr. Reeves, and then more faces, wolves I'd commanded during the evacuation, people I'd saved, lives I'd touched. They crowded into the tent and spilled outside it, all wanting to see the speaker who'd kept them alive. "Thank you," someone said. Then another, and another, until it became a chorus. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." I'd spent 18 years being the broken one, the failure, the shame no one wanted to acknowledge. And now, in the span of one catastrophic day, I'd become something else entirely. A protector. A bridge. A possibility. "What do we do now?" I asked Darius quietly, through our bond. "We build something better," he answered. "Together." I took his hand, feeling the solid certainty of our connection, and looked out at the faces gathered around us. Speaker and shifter, Omega and Alpha, all waiting to see what would come next. And for the first time in my life, I had an answer. "We change everything." Epilogue. 6 months later. The new settlement had a name now, Haven. It wasn't grand like the Citadel had been, no towering spires or marble halls, but it was ours, built from cooperation between speakers and shifters, designed to accommodate both. Training grounds where young speakers learned control alongside young wolves learning restraint. Medical facilities where Dr. Reeves researched the genetic connections between our kinds. Archives where Thornwood catalogued, rescued histories. And at the center of it all, a simple stone platform, where the 3 interlocking circles had been carved, the symbol of speaker heritage that was no longer forbidden, but celebrated. I stood on that platform now, watching the sun set over the mountains, feeling the weight of responsibility and the lightness of purpose balanced perfectly. Darius joined me, his hand finding mine automatically. Our bond had deepened over the months, grown from desperate necessity to genuine partnership. Love, even, though we rarely named it that way. Some things were too big for words. The council approved the next phase, he said. We can start expanding, bringing in more potential speakers from the outer territories. How many? 17 identified so far. Children and young adults who've been diagnosed as unstable but show the markers. Thornwood's network is growing. We have sympathetic betas in 4 territories now, willing to redirect cases to us instead of the council's asylums. 17 more lives saved. 17 more bridges built. I leaned into him, drawing comfort from his solid warmth. My grandmother would be proud. This is what she saw, what she prepared me for. Not just surviving, but thriving. Creating space for people like us to exist without apology. She'd be proud of more than that. She'd be proud of you not just for what you've accomplished, but for who you've become. Strong, certain, free, free. The word resonated in my chest. I'd spent 18 years trapped by what I wasn't, and 6 months discovering what I could be. The wolfless girl had become the woman who spoke to beasts, who commanded respect without demanding submission, who proved that different could mean powerful instead of broken. Behind us, a howl rose from the training grounds. Sarah, now 13, successfully commanding a practice formation without overwhelming the participants. Her control had grown enormously. Her power channeled into purpose rather than chaos. Soon she'd be teaching others, passing forward what I'd taught her, creating a legacy that would outlast us all. Your wolf is closer, Darius observed. I can feel her stirring when you use your speaker abilities now. He was right. The dormant shifter bloodline in me was waking, responding to constant use of my power, growing stronger daily. Soon, maybe weeks, maybe months, I'd shift for the first time. Not at 18 when tradition demanded, but when I was ready, when both halves of me were aligned and willing. What do you think I'll be? I asked. Wolf? Direwolf? Something else entirely? Something magnificent, he said with certainty. Something that's never existed before, because you're forging a path no one else has walked. The sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. Across Haven, lights began to appear, cookfires, lanterns, the glow of community settling in for evening. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, from worthless to invaluable, from broken to whole, from alone to surrounded by family chosen rather than born into. Thank you, I said to Darius, for seeing what I could become before I could see it myself. Thank you, he countered, for showing me that monsters can be redeemed, that curses can be blessings in disguise, that the space between human and beast isn't a prison, it's a home. We stood together as darkness fell, 2 halves of one impossible whole, and watched Haven transform from settlement to sanctuary. The world was changing. We were changing it. And somewhere in the territories beyond, more speakers were waiting to be found. More wolves were waiting to learn that different didn't mean dangerous. More stories were waiting to be told. But for now, in this moment, there was only peace. Only purpose. Only the certainty that we'd found what we were looking for, belonging,